Chapter 142. After coming down from the small building, Li Mu raised his head and looked up. There were 4 floors in this building. Each floor had a square wooden plaque. From top to bottom, they were respectively heaven, earth, black, and yellow. This was the treasure vault of the county government. It was used to store the rewards of the county government. According to the contributions of the officials, the rewards were divided into 4 levels. The higher the floor, the higher the grade of the magic treasures. It was said that in the heaven floor, there were heaven-grade Fulu, heaven-grade magic treasures, and Taoist techniques as rewards. Of course, items of this level would not be stored here. They would need to ask the imperial court for permission from the emperor himself. Then, the imperial court would distribute them. Li Mu did not even need to think about heaven-grade merits. Unless he killed a demon sect elder like the Thousand Illusions Venerable or the Nether Saint, or destroyed a demon sect's subsect by himself. Those who could do all these did not care about these rewards. Those who cared about these rewards did not have the ability to obtain them. Li Mu did not have any extravagant hopes. Thinking about the scene in the back hall, he asked Constable Zhao. The county governor seems to hate Chu Jiang of Gojouzian very much. Constable Zhao sighed and shook his head. The county governor and Chu Jiang of Gojouzian have a blood feud. His parents, wife, and children all died at the hands of Chu Jiang of Gojouzian. Thinking about the county governor's appearance, Li Mu was shocked. Constable Zhao continued, when the county governor first came to the North County, he took the lead. When he encountered dangerous tasks, he always rushed in front of everyone. The 18 ghost generals under Chu Jiang of Gojouzian committed all kinds of crimes in the 13 districts of the North County. The county governor killed 5 of them in half a month. Even the number 1 ghost general that Chu Jiang of Gojouzian valued the most was killed by the county governor. Li Mu didn't expect the commandery officer to have such a past. Thinking of the drunkard just now, he couldn't associate him with such a brave image. Constable Zhao's face was filled with grief as he said, when the 5 ghost generals were killed, Chu Jiang of Gojouzian was enraged. He personally took action and exterminated the prefectural governor's family. Since then, the prefectural governor has become what he is now. He hates Chu Jiang of Gojouzian to the core. Otherwise, with your contribution in killing an evil spirit, you wouldn't have been able to choose resources from the Xian. While Li Mu sighed in his heart, he also raised his vigilance. As a bailiff, his duty was to protect the safety of the people under his jurisdiction. He often had to risk his life against these demons and ghosts. Even if he wasn't afraid of them, he had to be on guard against them attacking the people around him. It was urgent to improve the strength of Lu Hanyan and Wanwan. He left through the back door of the county office. For a long time, Li Mu's task was to investigate the secrets of the brothel called Spring Wind Pavilion. In order to not attract attention, he didn't have to come to the yamen again. Going from the back street to the main street, Li Mu hesitated for a moment when he passed by a jewelry store. He walked in and bought a hairpin. Then he went to the market and bought the pig trotters that Wanwan liked and the roasted chicken that Xiaobai liked. He took them home. Lu Hanyan didn't go out today. Seeing Li Mu, she said in surprise, "Why are you so early today?" "There's nothing going on in the yamen today." Li Mu put the things in the kitchen and asked, "You didn't go to the store?" "With Xianxia there won't be any problems." Lu Hanyan glanced at him and said, "Besides, didn't you tell me to come back early?" Li Mu didn't say anything else. He took out the jade hairpin and handed it to her, saying, "This is for you." Lu Hanyan didn't immediately reach out to take it. She asked, "Why are you suddenly giving me something?" She glanced at Li Mu and saw that his expression was normal. She was suspicious. Did he know what it meant for a man to give a woman a hairpin? Li Mu said, "If you don't want it, I'll give it to Wanwan." Lu Hanyan finally reached out to take it. Li Mu looked at the little maid who had a disappointed expression. He walked over and pinched her face with a smile, saying, "Of course, there's also yours." He took out a brocade box from his sleeve and handed it to her, saying, "See if you like it." The little maid's face bloomed with a smile again. She hurriedly took the brocade box and opened it. She was stunned for a moment. A jade hairpin lay quietly in the brocade box. The jade hairpin was exquisitely made. The body of the hairpin was carved with beautiful patterns. At the top was a beautiful pearl flower with beautiful tassels hanging from the bottom. No matter how she looked at it, this jade hairpin was much more beautiful than the previous one. Compared to this jade hairpin, Lu Hanyan's hairpin was just an ordinary white jade with a bead embedded in the back. Wan Wan lowered her head and hesitated for a moment. She held the jade hairpin and walked in front of Lu Hanyan, saying, "Miss, this is for you." Lu Hanyan also pinched her face and said, "Since it's for you, you should take it." Li Mu knew that Wan Wan and Lu Hanyan had a deep relationship. If Lu Hanyan hadn't taken her in, she would have been abandoned by her parents and starved to death in the wilderness. Therefore, she always wanted to give the best things to Lu Hanyan. When she saw that her hairpin was more beautiful than hers, her first thought was to exchange it with her. Lu Hanyan treated her as a younger sister, but in her heart, she had always regarded herself as a maid. Although Xiaobai envied Lu Hanyan and Wan Wan's gifts, she also knew that before she could transform, these beautiful clothes and jewelry could only be looked at. After dinner, she couldn't wait to go back to her room to cultivate. Li Mu and Lu Hanyan washed the dishes together and said, "Come out of the city with me." Lu Hanyan asked, "Why are we going out of the city?" Li Mu said, "You'll know in a while." After instructing Wan Wan and Xiaobai to guard the door at home, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan walked out of the house and out of the city. Lu Hanyan didn't say much along the way. Li Mu knew what she was thinking and explained, "Your hairpin is different from Wan Wan's." "I know it's different." Lu Hanyan curled her lips and said, "You like Wan Wan and Constable Li. You give them all the good things first and then they give the rest to me. After all, I'm not as good at fighting as Constable Li, and I'm not as obedient as Wan Wan. I'm not your type." If Li Mu could go back to a few months ago, he would definitely slap himself in the face. Now, he could only cough softly and say, "Actually, that was just a joke. Apart from being better at fighting than you, and Wan Wan being more obedient than you, what else can she compare to you? You're multi-talented, you're good in the kitchen, you're beautiful and rich, and you're talented in cultivation. Which man wouldn't like someone like you?" Lu Hanyan's beautiful eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. "You really think so?" Li Mu pointed to the sky and said, "I swear on my Taoist heart." Lu Hanyan lowered her head and said, "Bah, who asked you to swear?" Li Mu smiled and asked, "You're not jealous now, are you?" "Really, you're even jealous of Wang?" Lu Hanyan blushed and snorted, Who's jealous?" Li Mu realized that his previous understanding of Lu Hanyan was still somewhat wrong. When she was cute, she didn't lose to Wan Wan at all. With her talent, it was only a matter of time before she surpassed Li Qing. He was really blind to have been so focused on condensing his soul back then. At some point, the two of them had left the official road, and there was no one around. If it were anyone else, Lu Hanyan naturally wouldn't have followed them to such a desolate place. She just looked at Li Mu in confusion and asked, "Why did you bring me here?" After Li Mu confirmed that there was no one around, he said, "Take out that hairpin. I said that your hairpins are different, but it's not what you think." Lu Hanyan took out the hairpin, and Li Mu formed the army formula with his hand. With a thought, the hairpin flew out from Lu Hanyan's hand and danced in the air. Li Mu's thought moved again, and the hairpin streaked across the air, piercing straight into a tree not far away. A small hole appeared on the trunk of the tree, through which light could penetrate. Lu Hanyan's red lips slightly opened, and she said in astonishment, "Is this a magic weapon?" Li Mu recalled the hairpin and asked, "Are you still jealous?" Lu Hanyan's pretty face turned red. She pinched his waist and said, "Don't mention it." Li Si said that when a woman starts to not avoid physical contact, even if it's physical abuse, it means that the distance between two people has been greatly reduced. If a woman doesn't like you, she won't even bother to look at you. Li Mu rubbed the soft flesh on his waist, and his heart was slightly happy. He continued, "I'll teach you the art of silence first, and then I'll teach you this Tao technique. Practice it every day, and in the future, when you encounter danger, you'll be able to catch your opponent off guard." The use of the army formula was to use an extremely small amount of dermic powers to activate magic treasures. Originally, only cultivators above the transcendent realm could master this ability. Lu Hanyan's hairpin, compared to Li Mu's Bai sword, was lighter and more agile, and also more concealed. This hairpin itself is a magic weapon. If it pierces a person's heart or brain, it can be a one-hit kill. Even if it's a transcendent realm cultivator, if they're not prepared and this hairpin pierces a vital point, their body will instantly die. Lu Hanyan clumsily controlled the hairpin. She asked, "Where did you get this hairpin?" Li Mu said, "I killed an evil spirit last time. I used my merit to exchange for it at the yamen." Lu Hanyan's gaze wandered. She asked, Why didn't you exchange it for something else?" Li Mu did not answer this question. He said, "Focus on practicing. I didn't even teach you this Dao technique." Lu Hanyan's eyes flashed with a hint of joy, but she said, "What does it have to do with me whether you teach it to others or not? Women always say one thing and mean another." Previously, when Li Qing was angry, she also said the same thing. After practicing for a while, seeing that Lu Hanyan was already able to control the hairpin steadily, Li Mu formed the 6 Ding Jade Maiden Mudra and said, "Watch this Dao technique carefully. Combined with what I just taught you, you can kill a third realm cultivator." Boom! Just as he finished speaking, a bolt of lightning struck from the sky. After Li Mu's research during this period of time, he figured out how to use the confrontation formula and the army formula in combination. Using Lu Hanyan's jade hairpin as an example, he first used the army formula to destroy the enemy's physical body unexpectedly. Regardless of whether it was a demon or a human, once their vitals were pierced, their physical body would die instantly. As for third realm demons and assembled spirit cultivators, after their physical bodies died, their souls could still leave their bodies and survive. After the army formula, he followed up with the confrontation formula. One destroyed the body, the other destroyed the soul. This combination was clean and efficient. Under normal circumstances, the enemy would not even have the chance to react before their souls were scattered. Lu Hanyan's dermic powers were ultimately not as good as Li Mu's. After practicing for only 10 or so times, her dermic powers were depleted. Leaning against a tree, she could not even stand stably. Li Mu walked to her side and said, "I forgot to tell you. Although Dao techniques don't consume much dermic powers, your dermic powers are still too weak. You can't practice for long periods of time. It's best to start with archery and throwing. Why didn't you say so earlier?" Lu Hanyan leaned against the tree, her chest rising and falling slightly. She said unhappily, "My legs are wobbly now. How can I go back?" Li Mu thought for a moment and asked, "How about I carry you?" Chapter 143. Although Lu Hanyan refused verbally, her body was very honest. Her physical strength and magic power were seriously overdrawn. If she didn't let Li Mu help, she could only crawl back. Li Mu gave her 3 choices. She could either hug, piggyback, or crawl back on her own. After thinking for a while, she still chose to let Li Mu piggyback her. She lay on Li Mu's back and hooked her arms around his neck. She said suspiciously, "Did you do it on purpose? Just now you kept telling me to practice more. Li Mu, do you think I want to piggyback you? You're so heavy." Lu Hanyan snorted and said, "What do you know? It's not like the lighter a woman is, the better." She wasn't wrong. Women weighed less than 100, so they were either flat-chested or short. Lu Hanyan's chest was flat, and she wasn't short either. She was hinting to Li Mu that she had a good figure and where her flesh should be. Li Mu shook his head and said, "How would I know? It's my first time piggybacking a woman." Lu Hanyan curled her lips. "Isn't it my first time being piggybacked?" Li Mu piggybacked her and walked straight along the official road. Lu Hanyan rested her head on his back and suddenly asked, "What you said last time, is it true?" "Which one?" "You said that in 2 years, if you and I haven't married, we'll be together." Li Mu's footsteps paused, and then he continued forward. "Of course it's true." Lu Hanyan said, "Didn't you say that I'm not your type?" "That's because I'm stubborn. Who wouldn't like someone like you?" Li Mu asked as he walked. "So you agree?" Lu Hanyan's lips curled up. "It depends on your performance in the future." Li Mu had been waiting for her to say this for a long time. He let out a sigh of relief, and his footsteps became lighter. Lu Hanyan said again, "However, I have another condition." Li Mu asked, "What conditions?" Lu Hanyan said, "Wan and I will never be separated for the rest of our lives." Li Mu asked, "What do you mean?" Lu Hanyan snorted and said, "Don't play dumb. Don't think that I don't know that you had this idea from the beginning. When you used the barbecue to lure Wan, you had this idea in your heart, right?" Li Mu defended himself, "I can swear to the heavens that at that time, I didn't have any thoughts about you." Lu Hanyan was jealous. "At that time, you were interested in Constable Li, weren't you?" Li Mu knew that she was starting to be jealous of Li Qing again. He changed the topic and asked, "When can we start the real dual cultivation?" As expected, Lu Hanyan's attention was diverted by this question. She said softly, "Don't even think about it now. We'll talk about it when you marry me." Li Mu actually didn't think about it now. There were too many resources that could be used to cultivate the lower three realms: soul power, courage, and spirit jades. Even if they didn't cultivate yin and yang dual cultivation, their cultivation speed wouldn't be too slow. After reaching the middle three realms, the effect of these resources would be minimal. Only then would the real effect of dual cultivation be revealed. Moreover, the first real dual cultivation was very important. It would be a great waste to integrate the primordial yang and primordial yin that they had accumulated for many years. Lu Hanyan was exhausted. Lying on Li Mu's back, her heart was very calm, and she soon fell asleep. She didn't wake up until Li Mu carried her home. Tonight, she probably didn't have the strength to do dual cultivation. Li Mu carried her to the bed in her room. When he walked out of the door, he said to Wan, "Come with me to my room." The little maid followed him into the room. She lowered her head and rubbed the corner of her clothes. She asked, "Young master, what's the matter?" Li Mu said, "Do you still remember that I told you that your eyes are very rare spirit eyes?" Wan nodded and said, "I remember." Li Mu patted her head and said, "Although spirit eyes are rare, they can see things that ordinary people can't, especially some yin spirits and ghosts. So I sealed your spirit eyes. Now that you have mana, you can control your spirit eyes. I will help you remove the seal. In the future, you can cultivate your eyes according to the method I taught you." Wan nodded obediently and said, "I will listen to you, young master." Old Wang once gave Li Mu a book on cultivating spirit eyes. He obtained more information from the memories of monk Qianhuan. He could help Wan find a correct path to cultivate spirit eyes. Li Mu formed a seal with his hands and wiped Wan's eyes. When she opened her eyes again, her eyes became clearer and brighter. It was like a whirlpool, as if it wanted to suck in Li Mu's entire mind. Li Mu quickly looked away, and that feeling disappeared. He was secretly shocked. Wan had only cultivated 2 souls and unconsciously used spirit eyes. She could already make his mind tremble. When she learned how to use this talent, it would not be difficult for her to cross realms to control. Soul, body, and primordial spirit would be completely restrained by her. This made Li Mu realize that if he did not work hard, he would not be able to catch up to Lu Hanyan. Perhaps even Wan could suppress him. When this task was completed, he planned to choose a magic treasure for Wan. He wanted to be fair, so that they would not think that he was biased. After Wan left, Xiaobai jumped in through the window and onto the bed. She quietly crawled to Li Mu's side. These few days, Lu Hanyan stayed at his place. Li Mu did not have time to use the light of Buddha to remove the demonic aura in her body. The demonic aura in her body became more obvious. This did not seem to be a long-term solution. Li Mu helped her every night, but he could only help her for a while. It was better to let her cultivate on her own. Demons were actually similar to humans in their cultivation. They could learn human supernatural powers and Tao techniques. Many demons would also take the path of cultivation of Taoism or Buddhism. Their bodies were originally strong, so it was more suitable for them to cultivate Buddhist supernatural powers. After using Buddhism to cleanse the demonic aura in their body, not only would their bodies become stronger, but some supernatural powers that targeted demons would also be useless to them. However, Xiaobai had not yet transformed, so she could not cultivate human cultivation methods. Even if Li Mu wanted to teach her, he would have to wait until she transformed. For Li Mu, the most important thing right now was to investigate Spring Wind Pavilion. According to the Yaman's information, this pavilion was very likely to be related to Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. To be safe, Li Mu decided to make sufficient preparations before the official investigation. There was no need to go to the Yaman for the time being. After Li Mu woke up, he made breakfast and waited for Lu Hanyen and the others to wake up. Lu Hanyen had slept with Wanwan last night. When she woke up and saw Li Mu, she asked in surprise, "You don't have to go to the Yaman today?" Li Mu replied, "I don't have to go these days." Lu Hanyen said, "That's good. After breakfast, let's go take a look at the shops together." With the help of the Su family, the branch of Yunyan Pavilion was progressing smoothly. Lu Hanyen bought 2 shops and recruited enough people. If all went well, the shops could open within a month. The operation of the music house and opera house was more troublesome than the bookstore and tea house. Perhaps because she felt that 4 shops were too exhausting, she only opened the bookstore and tea house in the county capital. There was no need to recruit musicians and performers, so it was much simpler. Li Mu also didn't want her to be too tired. The 2 shops were handed over to the shopkeepers to manage, so she could have more time to cultivate. In the future, it would be good to cook at home and take care of the children. Li Mu, Wanwan, and Lu Hanyen were walking on the street. When the 2 girls passed by a jewelry shop, they planned to go in and pick a few pieces. Li Mu stood outside and waited for them. Opposite the jewelry shop was a brothel. Several women with heavy makeup were trying their best to solicit customers. "Young master, come in and take a look." Shopkeeper Wang, "A new batch of tea came in yesterday. Don't you want to try it?" "Young Master Qian, several of our girls miss you." Li Mu's eyes swept over the women. He raised his head and saw the plaque, Spring Wind Pavilion, hanging above the brothel. A golden light flashed in his eyes, but he didn't see anything unusual about Spring Wind Pavilion. The brothel keeper and prostitutes at the door were all human women. There was no ghostly or demonic aura around Spring Wind Pavilion. Everything was normal. No matter how he looked at it, it was just an ordinary brothel. Most of the men coming out of Spring Wind Pavilion had gloomy faces. Their footsteps were weak and their yang qi was lacking. They looked like normal brothel patrons. Seeing the handsome young man staring at them from the entrance of the jewelry store, a prostitute boldly approached and said with a smile, "Young master, you've been standing outside for so long. Do you want to go in and have some fun?" Li Mu didn't have time to answer before a pain came from his waist. Lu Hanyen came out of the jewelry shop and held Li Mu's arm. She didn't look at the prostitute and said, "Wanwan, let's go." Wanwan glared at the prostitute. She stuck out her small chest and held Li Mu's other arm. With Lu Hanyen on the left and right, she almost carried Li Mu away. The prostitute shook her head, walked back, and once again tried to win over the passing men. Lu Hanyen held Li Mu's arm and asked coldly, "What do you think? Are they beautiful?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "They're dressed like ghosts. They're not beautiful." Lu Hanyen gritted her teeth and said, "If they're not beautiful, then why did you look for so long?" Li Mu couldn't refute and could only say, "I was just looking." "They're not beautiful, but you look at that kind of place. You men are really the same. I won't look next time." "Next time?" "There won't be a next time." Li Mu walked on the street with one arm held by Lu Hanyen and the other arm held by Wanwan. Along the way, they attracted countless people's attention. Who knew how many people bumped into others because they turned around? Lu Hanyen seemed to have forgotten to let go. She held Li Mu like this, and Wanwan on the other side didn't let go either. In the distance, Li Mu saw a familiar figure coming from the front. Li Si wasn't alone. There was a woman beside him. The woman was 5 feet tall and at least 3 feet wide. She held Li Si with a sweet face. Standing beside the woman, Li Si, who was 6 feet tall, looked like a little bird. Li Si obviously also saw Li Mu. He looked at Lu Hanyen on Li Mu's left, then looked at Wanwan on Li Mu's right, and then looked at his own side. He looked up at the sky and tried hard not to cry. Chapter 144. Chen Miao Miao noticed Li Si's abnormality. She turned around and asked in confusion, Li Si, what's wrong? Li Si wiped his tears and said, It's nothing. The wind is a little strong today. I think some sand got into my eyes. Chen Miao Miao said with concern, Let me help you blow. No need. Li Si said, I'll be fine after I cry for a while. Lu Hanyan saw someone familiar and quickly let go of Li Mu's hand. Wanwan also let go. Li Mu glanced at Li Si and smiled at Chen Miao Miao. Miss Miao Miao is back. Chen Miao Miao looked at Li Mu in confusion. She quickly remembered and smiled. It's you. We met in Xianxia County. Li Mu didn't want to disturb Li Si and Chen Miao Miao's reunion. He smiled and said, We still have some things to do. We won't disturb you. You can continue shopping. Ever since she met Chen Miao Miao, Wanwan had a lot on her mind. Li Mu accompanied Lu Hanyan to look at the unfinished shop. Wanwan couldn't help but ask, Young mistress, will I look like Miss Miao Miao in the future? Just keep your little heart in your stomach. Lu Hanyan patted her head gently and comforted her. Miss Miao Miao didn't want to be like this. She doesn't eat as much as you. She then looked at Li Mu and asked, Is Li Si really together with Miss Miao Miao? Li Mu had told her about Lin Wan's case and also about Li Si and Chen Miao Miao. He nodded and said, I'm afraid he has no choice but to be together with her. Lu Hanyan said, That's good too. Otherwise, he won't be doing his job and loitering around brothels. Actually, he wasn't like this before. Having received a lot of favors from Li Si, Li Mu decided to defend him. In the past, he was just like me. He wouldn't even take a second look at the brothels when he passed by. He has a fiancée named Qing Qing. Qing Qing and he are childhood sweethearts. He scrimps and saves every day, eating steamed buns and drinking water to save up his salary. He wants to gather enough betrothal gifts for Qing Qing. Lu Hanyan listened attentively and asked, What happened next? Li Mu said slowly, Later, when he gathered all the betrothal gifts, Qing Qing had already married a rich man as a concubine. She despised Li Si for being too poor and unable to give her the life she wanted. Lu Hanyan frowned and said, The life you want depends on your own efforts. It's fine if you don't marry this kind of woman. She doesn't have any self-reliance and self-respect. She deserves to be a man's vassal for the rest of her life. It's not worth it for him to fall for such a woman. With Lu Hanyan's own experience, it was normal for her to look down on these women who worshipped money. Li Mu said, Men can't forget their first love. Qing Qing was the first woman Li Si liked. The deeper the love, the deeper the hurt. Qing Qing, Qing Qing. Lu Hanyan seemed to have thought of something. She looked at Li Mu and asked, So, you also can't forget Arrestor Li? Li Mu looked around and suddenly said, What, are you hungry? Let's go eat. The prefectural minister's manner. Chen Miao Miao sent Li Si back to his room and said, If there's anything else you need, just tell me. I'll have my father prepare it. Li Si was silent for a moment. He turned his head to look at her and said, Actually, there's something I've been hiding from you. Chen Miao Miao was stunned and asked, What is it? Li Si said, My name isn't Li Si. My name is Li Si. Chen Miao Miao asked doubtfully, Then when we first met, why did you say your name was Li Shan? To hide my identity and purpose. Li Si's eyes were apologetic. He said, In order to bring Zhao Yong to justice, I had no choice but to lie to you. Chen Miao Miao's face gradually paled. She muttered, So, you've been lying to me all this time. You've never liked me? Li Si didn't answer directly. He only sighed and said, You're a good girl with a good family background and a kind heart. I'm just a small bailiff. I only have a salary of 500 coins a month and I often hang around brothels. I'm not as good as you think. Chen Miao Miao shook her head and said, I don't care about your past or your identity. I only care if you're sincere to me. Li Si said, I'm so poor that I can't even support myself. You won't be happy if you follow me. Chen Miao Miao raised her head and said, As long as I can be with the person I like, I'll be happy. If you feel uncomfortable here, we can go back to Xianxia County. If you can't support me, then I'll support you. I can pawn those gold and silver jewelry and exchange it for money. It's enough for us to live. We can also do a small business. We can live well without father's care. Li Si stared at her in a daze. The image of a woman nestled in someone else's arms, ignoring his pleas, and closing the vermilion door appeared before his eyes once more. You're just a small bailiff. You won't have any future in your life. I won't be happy if I follow you. The woman's words were still deeply engraved in his heart. He looked at Xianxia and suddenly laughed. Li Si raised his hand and wiped away her tears. He said, "Everything I've said to you is true." Xianxia smiled through her tears. She held his hand and said, "I'm also true. I'm willing to go to Xianxia County with you because I want to suffer with you." Li Si shook his head and said, "You're willing to suffer with me, but I'm not willing to let you suffer. Let's stay in the county capital." In the past few days, Li Mu and Lu Hanyan's relationship had warmed up daily. Although she would ask some questions about death from time to time, under Li Si's influence and guidance, they were able to survive each dangerous situation safely. When he saw Li Si again, Li Mu was shocked. 3 days ago, he was only an ordinary person without any mana. 3 days later, he had already refined the 3 souls. The saber at his waist had also been replaced with a treasured saber. He looked at Li Si and said in shock, "You've really made up your mind?" Li Si nodded and said, "I've made up my mind. Miao Miao is a good girl. I can't let her down." The prodigal son had turned over a new leaf and the Sea King had come ashore. It was a joyous occasion. Li Mu clasped his hands and said, "Congratulations." Li Si shook his head and said, "However, father-in-law also has a condition. He wants me to cultivate to at least the transcendent realm before marrying Miao Miao. If Li Si cultivated alone, it would probably take him at least 20 years to reach the middle realm. However, with his speed of refining 1 soul per day, if his rich and powerful father-in-law was willing to spend unlimited cultivation resources on him, his cultivation could reach the transcendent realm within 2 years. Although his battle prowess could not compare to a normal transcendent realm cultivator, his cultivation was at the middle realm. Li Si asked, "How's your matter?" Li Mu nodded and said, "It's just a matter of time. I said that sooner or later, you two will fall in love with each other." Li Si's expression showed that he understood and asked again, "However, have you really thought it through? Are you sure you won't regret it in the future?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "Why would I regret it?" Li Si looked at him and nodded slightly. "Cherish what you can now. Let's talk about the future later." The two walked on the street. When they passed by Spring Wind Pavilion, Li Si looked straight ahead while Li Mu glanced at it. Li Si said in surprise, "You're not interested in this kind of place, are you? You think I'm you?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "There's a very important case related to this brothel." Li Si looked back at Spring Wind Pavilion. After a while, he nodded and said, "There is indeed a problem with this brothel." Li Mu's heaven's eye and insight couldn't see the problem with this brothel. He looked at Li Si and asked in surprise, "What did you see?" Li Si said, "The girls here are not real brothel girls. When I first came here, they actually took my money." Li Mu asked, "You talked about life with them?" Li Si said, "Yes. There really is a problem." Li Mu whispered and looked at Spring Wind Pavilion. "You go first, I'll go in and take a look. Be careful." Li Si left directly. Li Mu turned and walked into Spring Wind Pavilion. On the other side of the street, Xianxia saw Li Si and Li Mu walking side by side. He was about to say hello, but just as he raised his arm, he froze. He saw Li Si walk past the street without stopping, and Li Mu walk into the brothel without hesitation. He rubbed his eyes and murmured, "Damn, I must be too tired these 2 days. I can't even tell Li Si and Li Mu apart." Lu Hanyan came out of a bookstore and saw Xianxia standing at the door. She asked, "What's wrong?" Xianxia shook his head and said, "Nothing, my eyes are a bit blurry." Chapter 145. Spring Wind Pavilion. As soon as Li Mu walked in, the brothel keeper greeted him with a smile. "Young master, do you know any girls? Would you like me to recommend them to you?" "Li Mu, it's my first time here." The smile on the brothel keeper's face became bigger. "Oh, it's a new guest. Today, you must serve the young master well." "Xianxia, Xiao, Rong, you three come here. Several girls were called over by the brothel keeper. The brothel keeper approached Li Mu and asked with a smile, "These three are the top girls in our shop. They are proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Young master, which one do you like?" Li Mu took a step back, keeping a distance from the brothel keeper, and looked at the three girls opposite him. Of the three, one was petite and cute, one had a hot figure, and one was tall and cold. Li Mu thought for a moment, pointed to the third one, and said, "She is." The brothel keeper said, Rong, why don't you lead the young master upstairs?" "Young master, please." The cold woman said coldly to Li Mu and turned to go upstairs. Although it was Li Mu's first time in a brothel, he knew that the attitude of a brothel woman to a guest was not like this. Li Si and Li Mu had said this kind of trick was just one of the methods they used to attract guests. This woman was not really cold, this was just her character. After all, the guests who could choose her were generally a little masochistic. They liked this kind of cold type, which made them more excited. The woman opened the door of a room and led Li Mu in. Then, she sat on the edge of the bed and pretended to be unapproachable. Li Mu walked to her side and asked, "Can you play the zither?" The woman was stunned for a moment and shook her head. "Can you play the flute?" The woman continued to shake her head. "How about the pipa?" The woman still shook her head. Li Mu waved his hand and said, "You can't do this, you can't do that, and you have the nerve to say that you're proficient in everything. Go down and tell the brothel keeper to get someone who can do these things." The woman was stunned for a moment. Then, she suddenly stood up and walked downstairs angrily. She said to the procuress, "There's a strange person here. He doesn't do what he should do and only wants to listen to music. Is he crazy? Who would come to a brothel to listen to music? I can't take this job. In this world, there are all kinds of hobbies. I usually ask you to practice the zither, but you don't listen. Now you're blaming the customer." The brothel keeper shook her head and said to the voluptuous woman, Xiao, you go." Li Mu sat in the room for a while. The plump woman named Xiao, whom the brothel keeper had introduced just now, swayed her hips and walked in. She hugged Guqin and asked with a smile, "Young master, what song do you want me to play?" "Li Mu, just play whatever you know." The woman put the Guqin aside and began to take off her clothes. Li Mu was stunned for a moment and asked, "If you want to play the zither, then play the zither. Why are you taking off your clothes?" The plump woman was startled and asked, "Do I have to wear it and play it?" Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Wear it." The woman looked at him strangely. She could only sit down and play the zither with both hands. This woman's zither skills could only be regarded as a beginner. But it was still incomparable to Lu Hanyan. Li Mu was used to Lu Hanyan playing the zither. Listening to her again, it was somewhat boring. The woman played the zither and found that there was no movement beside the bed. She looked up and found that the young customer was lying on the bed asleep. She couldn't help but feel strange. In the past few months, she had served a lot of customers, but this was the first time she met someone like him. He came to the brothel and didn't look for physical entertainment. He only listened to music and fell asleep. However, she was not too surprised. She had seen men with all kinds of hobbies. Some people's hobbies in this area were so abnormal that it made people's hair stand on end. Compared to them, this young master was nothing. She played for a while and saw that the other party had fallen asleep. Her fingers left the strings, stood up, and lit an incense burner. As the incense burner emitted green smoke, a trace of weak yang qi drifted out from Li Mu's body and was absorbed into the incense burner. After doing this, the woman walked to the bed and looked at Li Mu's face. She murmured, "You look so handsome, where can't you find a woman? Why did you come to this kind of place?" She gently stroked Li Mu's face and sighed, "What a handsome young master." Li Mu, who was lying on the bed, already knew what this brothel was doing secretly. They were the same as the green snake, sucking people's yang qi. However, the green snake was obviously not smart enough. It only grabbed one person and sucked. Naturally, it was easy to reveal flaws and be noticed by the authorities. And the same method of sucking people's yang qi, this brothel's method was much more brilliant. The customers who came here were originally here to have fun. Coincidentally, Their way of having fun was also very physically and mentally exhausting. This way, even if they lost some yang qi, no one would notice. The lack of yang qi was not much different from the lack of kidney qi. They didn't need to absorb too much from a person. As long as the brothel was open, there would be an endless stream of customers. The yang qi was inexhaustible. This woman was not a demon ghost, nor was she a cultivator. She mainly relied on that strange incense burner to absorb yang qi. In order not to arouse suspicion, Li Mu took the initiative to release a trace of yang qi for her to absorb. He also didn't absorb too much of this woman's lust, so that she wouldn't feel the slightest discomfort. In the process of carrying out his task, he didn't forget to take advantage of her. After all, whether or not she could complete the collection of yang qi and successfully condense the sixth essence depended on this. Li Mu didn't know where the yang qi absorbed by the incense burner went. He was only here today to find out. During this period, he would probably become a regular here. After all, the county government didn't want to destroy this place. They wanted to secretly investigate and find out the secret of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. He had absorbed enough of yang qi. If he continued, this woman would notice. Li Mu heaved a sigh of relief and slowly opened his eyes. "Young master, you're awake." The woman sat by the bed and smiled. "Do you want me to help you bathe?" "No need. I just want to sleep for a while." Li Mu said, "I haven't been sleeping well these few days. After listening to your song, I feel much better. I'll look for you again next time." The woman stared blankly as Li Mu got off the bed, put on his shoes and walked out. She sat by the bed and said in surprise, "That's it." "That's it?" Downstairs, Li Mu looked at the brothel keeper and asked, "Listening to a song costs 1 tael of silver?" The brothel keeper smiled and said, "1 tael of silver is cheap. If young master goes to the music house and orders the ladies, it will be even more expensive." Li Mu didn't talk nonsense with the brothel keeper. He simply took out the money. He knew that this kind of place was expensive, but he didn't expect it to be so expensive. This money must be reimbursed by the government office later. The plump woman came down from upstairs and said, "This young master is really strange. He just listened to a song and slept." The brothel keeper didn't care and said, "There are all kinds of people in this world. It's not strange after seeing many of them." After she said that, she asked a question without rhyme or reason. "You didn't forget, right?" The plump woman nodded and said, "I didn't forget." The brothel keeper said, "That's good. Go outside and get customers." Li Mu walked out of Spring Wind Pavilion. He didn't go to the government office, nor did he go home. First, he walked around for a while to see if anyone was following him. It was difficult for a normal man to go to a brothel to listen to music without arousing suspicion. But this was something that couldn't be helped. Arrestor Zhao's intention was to let him put on a show and be a dedicated undercover agent. He had to make the show real and use real guns and real bullets. Of course, Li Mu couldn't accept it. For a mission, he lost the primordial yang energy that he had saved for 19 years. It was a bloody loss. His primordial yang energy was reserved for Lu Hanyan. On the street of June City, at the door of a tea house, Lu Hanyan looked at the door of Spring Wind Pavilion and asked Zhang Shan, "Did Li Mu just come out from inside?" Zhang Shan quickly shook his head and said, "No, I didn't see him. You must have mistaken him for someone else." When Li Mu returned home, Lu Hanyan was sitting in the courtyard with her back to him. Wan Wan stood beside her and kept winking at Li Mu. Lu Hanyan turned to look at him and asked, "Where did you go at noon?" Li Mu said, "I didn't do anything, nothing." Lu Hanyan stood up and looked at him with disappointment. "Wan Wan and I saw you come out of the brothel with our own eyes." Li Mu was startled and explained, Lu Hanyan said sadly, "What about you? Don't tell me that you went to the brothel just to listen to music?" Li Mu was silent for a moment. He looked at her and said helplessly, "If I said that I really just listened to a song, would you believe me?" Lu Hanyan didn't say anything. Li Mu didn't expect that he would be caught red-handed doing a proper job. Times had changed. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have needed to explain to Lu Hanyan. But it was different now. If he didn't explain, the wife he was about to pursue might run away. Li Mu looked pleadingly at the little fox and said, Xiao Bai, you're the only one who can prove my innocence now. Xiao Bai understood and jumped onto the table. She said to Lu Hanyan, Big Sister Lu, you misunderstood. Nothing really happened with our benefactor. Lu Hanyan said angrily, You're still speaking up for him at this point. No, I'm not siding with our benefactor. Xiao Bai leaned close to Lu Hanyan's ear and whispered a few words. Lu Hanyan was stunned for a moment. She said in disbelief, You can tell? Xiao Bai nodded and said, This is the talent of our clan. Our benefactor still has his vitality. Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyan and said, I swear, I went to the brothel today for an errand. I came back after listening to a song. I didn't even touch those girls. Lu Hanyan already believed him, but she still said stubbornly, What errand required you to go to the brothel? Li Mu didn't answer. He just shook his head and said, You don't trust me. You've disappointed me. He ignored Lu Hanyan and went straight to his room. After a while, Lu Hanyan walked in from outside and whispered, I was wrong. Li Mu glanced at her. What was wrong? Lu Hanyan lowered her head and said, I shouldn't have mistrusted you. Li Mu snorted and said, Is one wrong enough? Lu Hanyan thought for a moment and threw him on the bed. She kissed him lightly on the lips and asked, I gave you my first kiss. Is that enough? Li Mu pursed his lips and said, You can make a few more mistakes next time. In your dreams. Lu Hanyan sat up again and asked, Was this your first kiss too? Li Mu thought for a moment and nodded. You're also the first woman I kissed. Chapter 146. Lu Hanyan was the first and only woman Li Mu had ever kissed. Suhi was a ghost, not a human. At that time, Li Mu's life was in danger. He was almost killed by Thousand Illusions' venerable master's soul power. He was in a coma and didn't have time to think about other things. Thinking of Suhi, he didn't know if she had come out of seclusion or if she had received the two ghosts Li Mu had sent her. Lu Hanyan was keenly aware of something and asked Li Mu, What are you thinking about? Li Mu quickly came back to his senses and said, You kissed me too quickly. I wasn't ready yet. Do you want to do it again, in your dreams? Lu Hanyan left in a hurry with a red face. Li Mu was relieved. Haste makes waste, and Lu Hanyan couldn't eat hot tofu. She took the initiative to kiss Li Mu, which was already a big step forward in their relationship. If Li Mu took an inch and wanted a mile, it would have the opposite effect. Let nature take its course. One day, the two of them would be able to completely give themselves to each other. Being caught by Lu Hanyan in the act of going to the brothel was also good. In the future, he could openly enter Spring Wine Pavilion without worrying about Lu Hanyan being angry. During the day, he only saw that the brothel was using some kind of utensils to absorb the yang energy of the customers. At night, Li Mu went to Spring Wind Pavilion again. As usual, he called a woman to play the zither while he slept on the bed. When the woman saw that Li Mu was sleeping, the zither gradually slowed down and stopped. She glanced at the sleeping Li Mu, picked up the incense burner, and left the room. When she left, she didn't notice that a paper figurine the size of her pinky was stuck to the bottom of her shoe. With the sound of the door closing, Li Mu, who had long since fallen asleep on the bed, slowly opened his eyes. Paper dolls were a secret technique of the Fulu school. Originally, only the disciples of the Fulu school could make them. Li Mu had found the method to make them from the memories of the Thousand Illusions' venerable master. The paper dolls created through the Fulu method could replace the owner to do some things. They could also be used to explore dangerous places. They had a wide range of uses. With the aid of the paper doll, he could hear the voices around the woman. In his ears, other than the sound of gentle footsteps, there were occasional moans of men and women. As the woman walked down the stairs and into the backyard, Li Mu's ears finally quieted down. Spring Wind Pavilion, backyard. The woman carried the incense burner to an ancient well. The brothel keeper of Spring Wind Pavilion was guarding the well. The woman slowly walked over and handed the incense burner to her. The procuress took the incense burner and said, You stay here and guard. Don't let any outsiders come in. The woman nodded respectfully and stood at the mouth of the well. The procuress held the incense burner and looked around. Seeing that there was no one in the courtyard, she directly jumped into the well. Li Mu was lying on the bed in the room. He didn't know what was going on around the woman. After the procuress's voice disappeared, there was no more sound. With the help of the paper doll, the range of hearing was limited. Li Mu was too far away from the woman, so his hearing couldn't work. He thought for a moment, got down from the bed, went around the back door, and flashed into the backyard. He covered his stomach and ran around. The woman found him and said in panic, "Young master, why did you come down?" Li Mu's face turned red. "Latrine, where is the latrine?" The woman pointed to the corner and said, "The latrine is there." Li Mu ran into the latrine in the corner of the courtyard. The woman looked at the latrine and then at the mouth of the well. She slowly put down a wooden bucket. Li Mu closed the latrine door and silently recited the clear heart chant to eliminate all disturbances. Finally, with his hearing, he vaguely heard some sounds. The sound came from underground. Li Mu thought of the dry well in the courtyard. He was sure that there was a problem with the well. Ghost General, last place, sacrifice, Xianxia. The sound coming from underground was very weak. Li Mu could roughly hear it. He was worried that if he stayed too long, he would be discovered and affect his plan. After listening for a moment, he walked out of the latrine, left 1 silver, and left Spring Wind Pavilion. A moment later, in the backyard of Spring Wind Pavilion, the woman lifted the wooden bucket and the procuress's body slowly floated out of the well. He looked at the woman and asked, "No one came here, right?" The woman shook her head. The nervousness on the procuress's face disappeared. She swayed her body and left. The woman left as well. As she walked, the paper dolls under her feet gradually turned to dust and disappeared. Half a month passed in a flash. In this half a month, everything in Spring Wind Pavilion was normal. The only difference was that every day, a young master would come here and pick a girl. He would only listen to music and sleep, not doing the things that men and women like to do. At first, everyone was a little strange, but after a long time, they became accustomed to it. Many of the guests who came here had strange fetishes. Some had a special liking for women's feet, some liked to be whipped by girls, and some liked to wear girls' underwear. Compared to them, the young master's hobbies were nothing. Xianxia County Government. Li Mu, wearing a cloak, entered from the back door and went to the guard room. In this half a month, he went to Spring Wind Pavilion every day and secretly investigated some information. At the same time, he also accumulated a lot of lust. Almost all the prostitutes in Spring Wind Pavilion had been sucked by him. He sat in the guard room for a while. Not long after, Constable Zhao came in from outside. He walked in front of Li Mu and asked, "How's the investigation?" Li Mu nodded and said, "After more than half a month of secret investigation, I found that behind Spring Wind Pavilion, there is indeed a ghost general under Chu Jiang of Gojosian controlling it. Her hiding place is in the well in the backyard of Spring Wind Pavilion." Constable Zhao said, "The ghost Qi is hidden in the well. No wonder you can't see anything strange from the outside." Li Mu continued, "The procuress and prostitutes of Spring Wind Pavilion should have been bewitched by her long ago. They secretly absorbed the yang qi of the guests for her to cultivate. Demonic ghosts could not only eat people, but they were also good at bewitching people. Those who were bewitched by them would completely become their slaves, unable to have the slightest disloyalty." Constable Zhao asked, "Why did this ghost take the risk to cause trouble in the county capital? Did you find the reason?" "I found it." Li Mu nodded and said, "The 18 ghost generals under Chu Jiang of Gojosian are not fixed. As long as the ghost soldiers under him are strong enough, they can replace their positions at any time. Not only that, Chu Jiang of Gojosian also set a cruel rule for the 18 ghost generals." Constable Zhao asked, "What rule?" Li Mu continued, "Within a certain period of time, the last ghost general who has not reached the spirit realm will be used as a sacrifice. His spirit will be erased and his soul will be sacrificed. In the backyard of Spring Wind Pavilion, the female ghost under the well has the strength of a peak evil spirit, almost reaching the spirit realm. She absorbs the yang qi of these people in order to advance. If she succeeds in advancing to the spirit realm, she will not have to worry about being sacrificed." Although the strength of a peak evil spirit ranked at the bottom of the 18 ghost generals under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, it was not the last. The culprit who made the female ghost so nervous was actually Li Mu. Before he killed the ghost general was ranked last among the 18 ghost generals. After he killed the ghost general, the female ghost became the last. If she didn't work hard, her intelligence would be erased and she would become someone else's nourishment. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon could think of such a way to motivate his employees. He was a genius. Constable Zhao asked, "Did you find out the secret of Chu Jiang of Gojoseon?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "If Chu Jiang of Gojoseon really has a secret, I'm afraid it's not something a low-level ghost general can know." "That's true." Constable Zhao nodded and said, "Continue to investigate first. Once you have any news, immediately report to the county government." Li Mu had a troubled look on his face. Constable Zhao asked, "What's the problem?" Li Mu said, "The expenses at Spring Wind Pavilion are too expensive. From start to finish, I have already spent more than 10 taels of silver. I can't keep paying like this. How about the Yamen give me some in advance?" Constable Zhao said in surprise. "Didn't they say that you hooked up with a rich woman, lived in a big house, and wore clothes of the best quality?" Li Mu froze for a moment and said angrily, "Who leaked? Who spread the rumor?" Constable Zhao smiled and said, "I only heard about it. The Yamen should pay for these taels of silver. I'll go to the treasury later to get it for you." Constable Zhao left the guard room and quickly came back. He gave Li Mu 30 taels of silver and said, "Take these 30 taels of silver first. If it's not enough, come to the Yamen to get more." Li Mu took the taels of silver and thought that he could be extravagant today. He could order 2 girls, one to play the zither, one to play the flute, and one to play the zither and flute. Anyway, the Yamen would reimburse him. If he exceeded the budget, he could apply again. After Constable Zhao finished speaking, he took out another item and handed it to Li Mu. He said, "The female ghost at the peak of the evil spirit realm is not to be underestimated. If things change, you might have to confront her directly. Take this magic weapon and return it when you're done." Li Mu looked down at the item in his hand. It looked like a soft branch, light as if it was weightless. He looked at Constable Zhao and asked, "What is this?" Constable Zhao explained, "This item is called the soul-beating whip. It's made from a 1,000-year-old willow branch and can cause great damage to souls and primordial spirits. With one whip, an ordinary spirit or resentful spirit will die and scatter. Even if it's an evil spirit, it won't feel good if it gets whipped. As long as you use this whip to delay the female ghost for a moment and send a message in time, the Yamen's reinforcements will arrive immediately." Li Mu's eyes lit up. The whip's restraint on souls was even stronger than his Bai sword. After using it, he had to figure out a way to get it. It would be a good idea to give it to Wan Wan for self-defense. Constable Zhao saw the light in his eyes and coughed softly. He said, "This is something from the Yamen. I'm only lending it to you temporarily. You have to return it when you're done with it." Li Mu smiled and said, I understand. He put away the soul-beating whip and thought for a moment. He asked again, "If something from the Yamen is broken or lost in the process of carrying out a task, do I have to pay for it?" Chapter 147. If he could get a free meal, Li Mu certainly wouldn't want to waste the opportunity to choose a reward. Unfortunately, Constable Zhao mercilessly told him that if something was lost or broken, he would have to pay for it. The value of each magic weapon couldn't be measured by the money of the secular world. If it had to be converted into silver, it would be at least 1,000 taels of silver. Although Lu Hanyan didn't lack this 1,000 taels of silver, she certainly wouldn't allow Li Mu to be so prodigal. Li Mu temporarily dispelled the idea of stealing this magic weapon. He put away the soul-beating whip. As long as he didn't activate it, no aura would leak out, and he wasn't afraid of being sensed by the evil spirit. Spring Wind Pavilion. When Li Mu walked in again, the brothel keeper greeted him and said with familiarity, "Oh, young master, are you going to order some more chow chow this time?" Li Mu had just received the special funds from the Yamen, so he generously said, "I'll order 2 this time. You can arrange it as you see fit." The brothel keeper said, "If it's 2, you'll have to pay more. In any case, the money would have to be returned." One more person meant one more person. Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Fine, I'll pay more. Do I look like someone who can't afford to pay more?" "Of course not." The brothel keeper's face was full of smiles. She beckoned the 2 women and said, "Hua Huan, you 2 accompany the young master." After entering the room, Li Mu had one woman play the zither and the other massage his legs. After a while, he had them switch places. The woman who was massaging his legs went to play the zither, and the woman who was playing the zither massaged his legs. In this way, he could evenly and continuously absorb the lust of the 2. It had to be said that this body was simply a sharp tool to harvest lust. He could cultivate by lying down every day. Li Mu closed his eyes as if he was enjoying himself, but his mind had already followed the brothel keeper to the bottom of the well. The silver he had just given to the brothel keeper had already been tampered with by him. There was a paper man at the bottom of the silver and a layer of silver powder. As long as the silver powder wasn't deliberately scraped off, the paper man wouldn't be found. The procuress carried the money with her. This time, Li Mu heard the voice very clearly through the paper figurine. Spring Wind Pavilion's backyard, under the well. This well was dry and devoid of water, but there was another space. In a small space under the well, there were tables, chairs, and cabinets. Nothing was lacking. A red-clothed woman was lazily lying on a bed. On the cabinet in front of the bed, there were several incense burners. The red-clothed woman gently took a deep breath. White smoke rose from the incense burners and was slowly sucked into her nose. After inhaling the smoke, a satisfied look appeared on her face. The procuress stood respectfully in front of the bed. After she finished inhaling the smoke, she replaced the incense burner with the other one. The woman in red took a few deep breaths and said, "You don't have to send any more incense burners down. The ones in the room can also be removed." Hearing this, the brothel keeper's face lit up. She asked, "Madam, are you finally going to be promoted?" The woman in red exhaled and said, "It's too late." The procuress was surprised. "How can it be too late?" The woman in red said, "In 3 days, His Highness will summon all the ghost generals. According to the news I received, a month ago, the green-faced ghost was killed by someone. There are only 17 ghost generals left. Without him, I'm the last of the ghost generals. If I can't advance to the spirit realm in 3 days, I will become His Highness' sacrifice." The procuress hurriedly asked, "What does Madame plan to do?" The woman in red got out of bed and said, "Fortunately, I'm only 1 step away from the spirit realm. As long as I absorb the young souls of all the men in this building, I can immediately advance." The procuress was worried, "But if Madame does this, I'm afraid you won't be able to hide it for long. The Yamen will soon know." The woman in red said, "These heartless men who only think with their lower bodies deserve to die. After I absorb them, I will leave here. You all should also run for your lives." On the bed in a room on the 2nd floor of Spring Wind Pavilion, Li Mu suddenly opened his eyes. The woman who was massaging his legs was surprised. "Young master, did I hurt you?" Li Mu said, "It's none of your business. You can leave first. I want to sleep alone." The 2 of them stood up and silently left the room. The moment the door closed, Li Mu got up from the bed and crushed a communication jade token without hesitation. After his investigation and the information collected by the Yamen over the past few years about Chu Jiang of Gojoseon and the 18 ghost generals, he found that the one who was hiding in Spring Wind Pavilion and absorbing the yang energy of the brothel guests was an evil ghost called Lustful Man, under Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. The one Li Mu killed was called Green-Faced Ghost. Lustful Man and Green-Faced Ghost were ranked very low among the 18 ghost generals. Li Mu thought that Lustful Man would be obedient and slowly absorb the yang energy. He didn't expect that he would kill Green-Faced Ghost and force Lustful Man into a desperate situation. 3 days later, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon would summon the ghost generals. At that time, Lustful Man would have to die again if he couldn't advance to the soul realm. Therefore, she was prepared to risk everything and use the brothel guests in exchange for a chance to advance. This brothel was under her control. Even if the guests died in the brothel, they would be discovered at least at night or even the next day. It would take time for the Jade Token to send a message and for reinforcements to arrive. During this time, Lustful Man would have absorbed many people. Li Mu didn't have time to hesitate. He pushed the door open and went downstairs. He walked down the stairs and saw a woman in red walking out of the backyard with the procuress. The woman in red had an ordinary face. She looked like an ordinary woman, but Li Mu felt that she was very dangerous. Li Mu's mind raced. In the next moment, he walked in front of the procuress and said, "I've been here so many times. Today, I don't want to listen to music. I want to eat meat." The procuress naturally knew what it meant to eat meat. She smiled and said, "Young master, who do you like? I'll arrange it for you." Li Mu pointed at the woman in red and said, "I want her." The procuress's expression changed and she laughed dryly. This won't do." Li Mu threw over an ingot of silver and said, "Why not? Do you have money that you don't want to earn here?" The old woman was about to speak when the woman in red took the silver and said with a smile, "As long as you don't mind me being old, I'm willing to accompany you for a while." The procuress's lips moved, but she didn't dare to say anything. Li Mu smiled at the woman in red and said, "Let's go." Seeing the two of them go up the stairs one after another, the procuress shook her head and said, "He's so handsome." "What a pity," she sighed and said to a woman beside her, "Let everyone stand outside. Today we'll attract more guests." On the second floor, Li Mu led the woman in red in and turned to close the door. In order to prevent this female ghost from killing others, he could only take the risk. However, wealth came from danger. This female ghost wanted to suck Li Mu's yang qi, and Li Mu also wanted to suck her lust. That green snake made Li Mu want to eat it. He had long wanted to find a more powerful demon ghost to harvest. This woman was only one step away from the soul realm. If he sucked her lust, and coupled with the gains from Li Mu's brothel during this period of time, it should be enough for him to condense the seventh soul. In this way, among the 7 souls, he only lacked the 5th soul. Fei Du, the woman in red, walked to the bed and leaned against it. She said, "Young master, you have to take pity on me." Li Mu walked to the bed and pretended to untie his belt. The woman in red sucked gently, and the yang qi in Li Mu's body dissipated and was sucked into her body. She coveted Li Mu's yang qi, so she would definitely have desire for Li Mu. Li Mu took a deep breath. The strong power of lust made him intoxicated. In order to make her more lust, Li Mu controlled the yang qi and poured it out of his body. He had already refined the 5 souls and had a pure yang body. The yang qi in his body was very abundant. This loss was nothing. The woman in red had a strange look in her eyes. The yang qi of the person in front of her was completely different from the yang qi of those men. Not only was it endless, but it also played a far better role in her cultivation than ordinary men. A greedy look appeared on her face as she increased the speed of her absorption. Li Mu's belt was still not untied. The speed of his absorption increased as well. Suddenly, a suspicious look appeared on the woman in red's face. After absorbing so much yang qi, not only did she not feel excited, she even felt a little weak. Li Mu had absorbed enough of the lust. Seeing that the ghost was suspicious, he raised his hand without hesitation and flung out a whip shadow from his sleeve, lashing the woman in red. The woman in red could not dodge at all and was instantly whipped. Sizzle! When the soul-striking whip struck her, a black mark appeared on her body. Wisps of ghostly qi spread out from the mark. "You're a cultivator." The woman in red's face was filled with anger. After coming to her senses, she stabbed her 2 ghostly claws at Li Mu's body. Li Mu was already prepared. As he retreated quickly, he lashed out with his whip again. Another black mark appeared on the woman's hand. Her face was extremely ferocious. She let out an angry roar and no longer bothered with Li Mu. She turned into a cloud of black mist and broke out of the window. She had actually escaped. Li Mu walked to the window and sensed a powerful aura. It was chasing after Lei Feng. Since the county governor had already made his move, Li Mu did not need to chase after her. He walked to the door and knocked out the procuress who had heard the commotion in the room and was about to come in to check. Many constables rushed in from the door and subdued all the brothel girls who did not know what had happened. Constable Zhao walked in and said, "The county governor has personally chased after her. She can't escape. Why did you suddenly clash with her? Did she find out?" Li Mu shook his head and said, "In 3 days, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon will gather all the ghost generals. The woman in red does not want to be sacrificed and is prepared to risk everything. She will kill everyone in the brothel and suck their yang qi and blood. I had no choice but to lure her into the room and send you a message at the same time." Constable Zhao patted him on the shoulder and said, "Well done. When we return to the county office, you will be rewarded. Can you return the soul-striking whip first?" Chapter 148. P.S. In the previous chapter, the name of the female ghost has been changed to Mrs. Chu. Li Mu regretfully handed the soul-beating whip to Constable Zhao. When he felt the lust in his body, his mood became better again. For Mrs. Chu, if she couldn't reach the soul realm in 3 days, she would be sacrificed to Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. Therefore, she had an extremely urgent desire to absorb Li Mu's yang qi. This desire between life and death just happened to make Li Mu. He could feel that the lust in his body had been perfected and he could condense his soul at any time. In Spring Wind Pavilion, the 2 women, Xiao and Rong, looked at Li Mu angrily. They gritted their teeth and said, "It's you who harmed Mrs. Chu." Li Mu had called them out the most in the past half-month, so he was the most familiar with them. He sighed and said, "I'm sorry, I'm a constable." Many prostitutes in the brothel, including the madam, had long been bewitched by Mrs. Chu. They regarded her as their master in their hearts. They needed the cultivators of the yamen to forcibly intervene in their minds so that they could become ordinary people again. Constable Zhao looked at the crowd and ordered, "Take them back to the yamen first." The constables took the prostitutes and marched to the yamen, attracting the attention of countless passers-by. When they passed by Yunyan Pavilion, even Lu Hanyan ran out to watch the fun. She saw Li Mu walking at the front at a glance. She ran over and asked, "What's going on?" Li Mu said, "Behind Spring Wind Pavilion, there is a female ghost controlling it. These are all brothel girls who have been bewitched by her. Now I want to take them back to the government office and remove the bewitchment of the female ghost. Now you should believe that I went to the brothel to do something serious, right?" Lu Hanyan rolled her eyes at him and said, "I'm not by your side. Who knows what you're doing inside?" Li Mu glanced at her and said, "Do you think I'm stupid enough to give away my primordial yang that I've been saving for 19 years to these prostitutes? My primordial yang is for you." Lu Hanyan blushed and quickly covered Li Mu's mouth. Since the last time she took the initiative to kiss him, he became bolder and bolder in front of her. The constables not far away did not hear what Li Mu said, but they saw the intimate actions of the two. One of the constables sighed and said, "Everyone said that Li Mu hooked up with a young, beautiful, and rich woman. I didn't believe it, but now I do." Another constable shook his head and said, "Li Mu is handsome and capable. He is highly regarded by Constable Zhao and the county lieutenant. His future is limitless. We can't be envious of him." Li Mu's hearing was very good. The words of those people entered his ears without missing a single word. He was a little depressed and said with a sigh, "They all said that I'm with you because of your money." Lu Hanyan said, "Isn't that the case? Shallow. Do you think I'm Zhang Shan who only has eyes for money?" Li Mu looked at her and said, "I like you because of your knowledge, gentleness, generosity, kindness, consideration, independence, talent, beauty, and dignity. Do you also say the same to those prostitutes?" Lu Hanyan glanced at Li Mu, but her wrist involuntarily wrapped around his. The Yunyan Pavilion would officially open in 2 days. She had nothing to do, so she held Li Mu's arm and followed him all the way to the county yamen. A few constables gathered the prostitutes in a room and removed the female ghost's charm on them. After a quarter of an hour, these women came out of the room. Although their faces were a little pale, their eyes were less rigid and more lively. Several women came over and bowed to Li Mu, gratefully saying, "Thank you for saving us. If it weren't for you, we would have been bewitched by that evil ghost for the rest of our lives. Li Mu waved his hand and said, I'm a constable. This is what I should do. The brothel keeper of Spring Wind Pavilion was even more excited. She ran over and said to Li Mu, if it weren't for you, our Spring Wind Pavilion would be finished. If you come to Spring Wind Pavilion in the future, you can order whoever you want. I promise you that I won't charge you a single cent. Li Mu was a little emotional. He never thought that one day he would be treated like Li Si in a brothel. Then he felt the temperature around him drop, and a chill rose from his heart. He said with a straight face, there's no need for that. The brothel keeper thought Li Mu didn't believe her, so she quickly said, you can come over today. I'll let your favorite Xiao and Rong serve you together. Xiao, Rong, why aren't you coming over? Constable Zhao looked at the two women coming over and said to Li Mu meaningfully, one is cold and proud, and the other is beautiful beyond compare. You really know how to choose? Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu with a smile and asked, so that's what you like? Between Xiao and Rong, who do you like more? This was a question of death with only one correct answer. Xiao had a proud figure, while Rong was cold and arrogant. If Li Mu dared to say that he preferred the cold and arrogant one, he would have to sleep alone tonight. He cleared his throat and was about to speak when the brothel keeper spoke first. I think His Excellency likes Rong more. The first time he came, he took a fancy to Rong at first sight. Lu Hanyan looked at Li Mu and said, I'll go back first. Constable Zhao didn't understand. Li Si patted Li Mu's shoulder and said, the devil is hidden in the details. You deserve it. When the brothel girls left the yamen, they looked at Li Mu reluctantly and said, His Excellency will wait for you at Spring Wind Pavilion. Li Mu could somewhat understand how Li Si felt before, but he didn't want this feeling. Just as he was about to chase after Lu Hanyan, a figure came from outside. Commandant Shen walked into the yamen, holding a thick iron chain in one hand. On the other end of the iron chain was a woman with disheveled hair. Li Mu looked carefully and recognized that she was Madame Chu. However, at this time, she was in a very sorry state. Her clothes were tattered and her hair was disheveled. Even her originally solid body was much more illusory. The iron chain passed through her shoulder blade, making it impossible for her to turn into a soul and break free. Commandant Shen looked at her indifferently and asked, Speak, what is Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's plot to come to the North County? Madame Chu stared at him fiercely and didn't say a word. A smile appeared on Commandant Shen's face and he said coldly, You won't speak, right? Li Mu walked out of the yamen's courtyard and could still hear Madame Chu's miserable screams. He didn't expect that Commandant Shen, a gentle person, could be so cruel. Even Li Mu couldn't stand the way he forced Madame Chu to speak and could only temporarily avoid him. Constable Zhao followed him out and sighed. Commandant Shen's parents and wife were all killed by Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. His hatred for Chu Jiang of Gojoseon is unimaginable. When the screams in the courtyard stopped and Li Mu walked in again, Madame Chu's soul was extremely weak and was on the verge of dissipating. Commandant Shen glanced at Li Mu and said, You haven't condensed your soul yet. Her soul power is useful to you. You can deal with it. Li Mu cupped his hands and said, Thank you, Commandant Shen. It seemed that he didn't get any useful information from Madame Chu. After all, Madame Chu wasn't in the soul realm and wouldn't be valued by Chu Jiang of Gojoseon. She was ranked 17th among Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's ghost generals, only slightly stronger than the 18th-ranked green-faced ghost. Commandant Shen untied a gourd from his waist, raised his head and drank a mouthful of wine. Then he left alone. Li Mu glanced at Madame Chu and didn't do anything. Even if he didn't do anything, this ghost's soul would dissipate in 15 minutes. The reason why Li Mu didn't do anything was that Madame Chu's yin qi was extremely pure and clear. Obviously, she hadn't killed anyone before the Spring Wind Pavilion case. However, she still wanted to kill someone. Li Mu had the ability to save her, but he didn't plan to. Madame Chu was lying on the ground and her soul was on the verge of collapse. She suddenly laughed. Li Mu looked down at her and asked, What are you laughing at? Madame Chu's face showed a trace of sarcasm. She said, I'm laughing at the ways of the world. Good people don't get good rewards while evil people sit firmly in the high court. You so-called government officials who make decisions for the people are just a group of people who bully the weak and fear the strong. Li Mu sneered and said, you suck people's yang qi and want to kill them. What kind of good is that? Madame Chu's soul had dissipated to the extreme. She didn't answer Li Mu and used the last of her strength to shout, Cui Ming, you'll die a horrible death. She closed her eyes and her soul was about to dissipate. The next moment, a golden light entered her body and made her soul more solid. Li Mu looked down at her and asked, who did you just say? Chapter 149. Li Mu was very familiar with the name Cui Ming. Su He's enemy was called this name. Although she did not tell Li Mu guessed that Cui Ming must have something to do with Su He's death 20 years ago. Madame Chu had already accepted her fate. She closed her eyes and said, if you want to kill me, then kill me. Give me a quick death. Li Mu asked, the Cui Ming you're talking about, is it Cui Ming, the magistrate of Xianxia County 20 years ago? Madame Chu's eyes suddenly opened. She said sternly, you know him too. Who is he to you? Li Mu said calmly, enemy. He looked at Madame Chu and asked, you have a grudge against him too? Madame Chu's face was full of hatred. She gritted her teeth and said, a great grudge. I want to cut him into pieces and eat him alive. Li Mu stood up and said, tell me. If what you say is true, I can spare your life. Madame Chu struggled to sit up and said, he used to be my fiancé. My family used all their power to help him condense his primordial spirit. That was how he became the magistrate of Xianxia County. However, he killed me and threw away my body not long after he became the magistrate. He wiped out my entire family and married the daughter of the magistrate of Zhejiang. Su He's experience was very similar to Madame Chu's. According to Li Mu's guess, Su He's death might be because of Madame Chu, and Madame Chu's death was because of the daughter of the magistrate of Zhejiang. Cui Ming's actions were similar to Zhao Yang's, but worse than Zhao Yang's. Madame Chu laughed bitterly and said, I was fortunate to be able to survive in this world as a soul. During these past 20 years, I cultivated bitterly and didn't hesitate to join the ranks of King Chu Jiang, all for the sake of being able to take revenge one day. Unfortunately, I don't even know where he is before I die. He's in Zhong County. Leaning against the wall, Commandery Captain Shen took a sip of wine from the gourd and said, Cui Ming, the husband of the daughter of the county chief of Zhejiang Commandery. 12 years ago, he exposed the collusion of the county chief of Zhejiang Commandery with the demon sect and was promoted by the late emperor. Later, he met Princess Yunyang and became her husband. 3 years ago, he was promoted to assistant minister of the West platform. Mrs. Chu chuckled pitifully. Back then, he used the excuse of colluding with heretical cultivation to wipe out the entire Chu clan. The Zhejiang county chief invited the wolf into the house, so this day should have come. Karma. Li Mu felt a chill in his heart when he heard this. Cui Ming had been promoted by stepping on the corpses of his wife's family. How could such a disloyal and heartless person enter the center of power of the imperial court? It was no wonder that Madame Chu sighed with regret before her death. Li Mu looked at Commandant Shen and asked, Your Excellency, what should we do with her? Commandery Captain Shen said, I have already handed her over to you. You can decide whether to kill or keep her. Li Mu actually did not know how to deal with her. Madame Chu did not kill anyone and did not cause any serious consequences. According to the law, she did not deserve to be killed. However, she had bewitched the people and sucked their yang qi. He could not let her go just like that. Madame Chu looked at Bai, who was hanging from Li Mu's waist. Determination suddenly appeared in her eyes. She said, If Cui Ming doesn't die, I won't be able to rest in peace. I am willing to become the spirit of your sword and serve you. Spirit bodies and soul bodies could be attached to magic treasures to increase their power. Some high-level cultivators would capture the souls of powerful demons and ghosts and forcibly refine them into magic treasures to increase their power. Li Mu had never thought of doing this before. After all, No one was willing to be refined into a magic treasure. If the sword existed, the spirit would exist. If the sword died, the spirit would die. Most magic treasure spirits were forced. Madame Chu was willing to become a sword spirit. She was not forced. If there was a spirit sword spirit in Bai, she would be able to control Bai herself. This would be much more flexible than Li Mu controlling the sword himself. It would be equivalent to having a middle realm helper when facing an enemy. Not only that, her greatest use was to lend her mana to Li Mu at critical moments. As long as he held Bai, his mana could reach the fourth realm in a short period of time. Even if Madame Chu's mana was not as good as Su He's, Li Mu could easily kill a fourth realm Abhijina. He could fight against a fifth realm Abhijina and a sixth realm Dongxian. Even if he could not win, he could at least protect himself. Li Mu could not resist such a temptation. He looked at Madame Chu and asked, "Have you thought it through?" Madame Chu's expression was resolute. She said, "With my strength alone, I will never be able to take revenge in this lifetime. I only hope that one day, I can see that villain Cui Ming die under this sword with my own eyes." Bai had already been recognized as Li Mu's master. As a sword spirit, she would also become Li Mu's servant. Madame Chu's only obsession was to seek revenge on Cui Ming. As for Su He's revenge, Li Mu would definitely avenge her. Cui Ming was heartless and deserved to die. Whether it was for personal or public reasons, Li Mu could not let him go. He pulled Bai out and said, "Come in yourself." Madame Chu's soul turned into a puff of smoke and merged into Bai. Li Mu used the sword to cut his fingertip and drew a rune on the sword with his blood. He formed a seal with one hand and released a stream of spiritual energy. The blood rune on the sword was instantly absorbed into the sword. After doing all this, Li Mu closed the scabbard and said, "You stay inside first. I will help you heal later." Commandant Shen looked at him and said, "In the case of Spring Wind Pavilion, you hid for half a month and saved countless lives. Your contribution is the greatest. You can choose 2 items from the Xian room. Let Constable Zhao take you there." Li Mu had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He cupped his hands and said, "Thank you, Commandant Shen." After a while, Constable Zhao took Li Mu to the 2nd floor of the treasure pavilion. He sighed and said, "You've only been here for a month and you've already entered the treasure pavilion twice. Most of the constables here can't even enter once a year. However, I've never seen a constable as reckless as you. You've only just reached the soul condensation realm and you dare to fight a 3rd realm demonic ghost." When they reached the 2nd floor, Constable Zhao said, "I won't introduce the items here to you. You can see for yourself. You have 15 minutes. Remember to choose what you want in 15 minutes. Li Mu wanted the soul-beating whip. When using this whip to fight enemies, 3 souls would leave the body with 1 strike and the 2nd strike would dissipate the soul. Wan's spiritual eyes could control souls, so it was perfect for her. He looked at Constable Zhao and said, "Can I choose the soul-beating whip?" Constable Zhao looked at him and said, "Why are you still thinking about the Yaman's items?" Li Mu smiled and said, "Among these items, I only want the soul-beating whip." He was afraid that if he didn't give it to him this time, he would keep thinking about it in the future. Constable Zhao finally said helplessly, "That's not for me to decide. I'll help you ask the county lieutenant." Constable Zhao left the treasure pavilion and quickly returned. He said, "The county lieutenant has agreed. You can take the soul-beating whip, but you can only choose the soul-beating whip. If you give up the soul-beating whip, you can choose 2 items. As for which one to choose, you can think about it yourself." Li Mu said without hesitation, "I choose the soul-beating whip." Constable Zhao took out the soul-beating whip from his sleeve and handed it to him. He said, "You're very lucky. 2 of the Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's ghost generals were killed by you. That's why the county lieutenant made an exception for you. Continue to work hard. Perhaps in 2 years, you'll be on equal footing with me." Li Mu put away the soul-beating whip and said with a smile, "I just want to do something for the people. I've never thought about these things." Constable Zhao waved his hand and said, "Let's go." Li Mu looked around and said, "It's not worth it to exchange 2 for 1. Can I exchange a few more spiritual jades? On the way home, Li Mu weighed the heavy spiritual jades in his sleeve and calculated his harvest this time. The Yamen had given him 30 taels of silver as a special fund. There were about a dozen taels left. Constable Zhao didn't ask, and Li Mu didn't mention it either. In addition to the silver, he had also obtained a soul-beating whip and 7 spiritual jades. Although they were of the lowest quality and couldn't be used by him and Lu Hanyan, they could be of great use to Wan Wan and Xiao Bai. In addition, his desire had been perfected. He could condense the 7th spirit at any time. His biggest gain was, of course, subduing a female ghost who was about to enter the spirit realm. This allowed his overall strength to improve by several levels. When he encountered high-level cultivators, he had enough strength to protect himself. After careful calculation, he realized that he had made a lot of money from this mission. When he returned home and walked into the courtyard, he saw Lu Hanyan sitting on a stone bench. She glanced at Li Mu and turned her head away. Obviously, she was still angry. Li Mu walked over and said with an apologetic smile, "I'm back." Lu Hanyan curled her lips and said, "Why are you back? Why don't you go to your Rongrong?" "She already said that she won't take your money," Li Mu said. "That's for the task." "I definitely won't go to that kind of place in the future." Lu Hanyan turned her head and still ignored him. Li Mu knew that she was angry not because he went to the brothel, but because he chose the cold and arrogant Rongrong the first time he went there. This would definitely make her connect something else. At that time, he had just chosen casually and didn't think too much. If he explained this matter directly, it would probably make things worse. Li Mu thought for a moment, and with a thought, he secretly pulled out Bai Yi's scabbard a little. A wisp of smoke floated out of Bai Yi and turned into a female ghost in red. She appeared beside Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan was sulking in her heart when she sensed something strange beside her. When she turned her head, she happened to meet a pale face. The woman in red had disheveled hair and a pale face. Her body was emitting a ghostly aura. Lu Hanyan pounced on Li Mu and hugged him tightly. She said in a trembling voice, "There's a ghost." Li Mu held her slender waist with one hand and patted her shoulder with the other. He comforted her. "Don't be afraid." Chapter 150. Li Mu hugged Lu Hanyan and comforted her. "Don't be afraid. She's the sword spirit I just accepted." Lu Hanyan finally realized something. She pushed Li Mu away and said angrily, "Are you doing this on purpose? I just want you to get to know each other. This is Mrs. Chu, Bai Yi's sword spirit." Li Mu introduced her to Lu Hanyan, then looked at Mrs. Chu and said, "This is Lu Hanyan. You can call her Lady Lu." Mrs. Chu bowed to Lu Hanyan and said, "Greetings, mistress." Lu Hanyan said, "Who's your mistress?" Li Mu took her hand and said, "Not now, but sooner or later you will be." He took out a piece of spiritual jade from his sleeve and handed it to her, saying, "This is for you." Lu Hanyan's attention was temporarily diverted. She asked, "What is this?" Li Mu said, "It's a spiritual jade. It contains spiritual power and can be directly guided out for cultivation. Take it first. There are a few more pieces. I'll give them to Wan Wan and Xiao Bai." Li Mu put Mrs. Chu back into the sword and left with an excuse from Lu Hanyan. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and let out a long breath. Li Si was right. The devil was often hidden in the details. He still had a lot to learn from Li Si. If he had the chance to go to a brothel next time, he would definitely choose the sexy and beautiful first. He gave the soul-striking whip to Wan Wan. Seeing the cute girl holding the whip, Li Mu felt that something was wrong. It seemed that Lu Hanyan was more suitable. However, he thought that if he gave the soul-striking whip to Lu Hanyan, she would probably have more chances to whip him in the future. It was safer to give it to Wan Wan. After all, although Lu Hanyan had many advantages, she could never compare with Wan Wan in terms of being well-behaved, obedient, and not being jealous. Of the 7 spirit jades, 1 was given to Lu Hanyan to taste, 3 were given to Wan Wan, and 3 were given to Little White. Li Mu and Lu Hanyan both had physiques that could easily absorb spiritual energy, and they were also dual cultivating every night. In fact, there wasn't much of a difference whether they had spiritual jades or not. For Xiao Bai and Wan Wan, The spiritual energy contained in a spiritual jade was at least equivalent to a month of their cultivation. Wan was more playful. Every day, she would think more about what to eat in the morning, what to eat in the afternoon, what to eat in the evening, and what to eat in the middle of the night when she was hungry. Xiaobai was very hardworking in her cultivation. Every day after dinner, she would stay in Li Mu's room for a while until Lu Hanyan came over before leaving. For the rest of the time, she would cultivate in her small room. Her entire clan had died tragically at the hands of human cultivators. For a heavenly fox, this was a blood feud that she had to avenge. Li Mu had asked her who the cultivator who killed her clan was, but Xiaobai couldn't say. Before the old fox died, she had only projected the appearance of the cultivator in her mind. After leaving Xiaobai's room and walking past Lu Hanyan's room, Li Mu walked in and couldn't help but ask, "Why didn't you ask me more about Mrs. Chu?" With Lu Hanyan's personality, she would be jealous of anyone. She shouldn't be so calm. Lu Hanyan rolled her eyes at him and said, "I trust you." Li Mu was somewhat touched. Lu Hanyan still understood him. Although he admitted that sometimes he wanted all of them, he wouldn't be tempted by just any female ghost or female demon. Whether it was in terms of appearance or strength, Mrs. Chu was far inferior to Su-He. Su-He's cultivation was profound. She looked only 2 or 3 years older than Lu Hanyan. Mrs. Chu was old enough to be Lu Hanyan's mother. He returned to his room, pulled out the bai scabbard, and let Mrs. Chu out again. Her foundation had been damaged by Commandery Officer Shin, and her soul had almost dissipated. Although Li Mu had protected her at the critical moment, he had only prevented her from dissipating. Her soul was still very weak. Li Mu recited the Heart Sutra, and a ball of golden light enveloped Mrs. Chu. After 15 minutes, the golden light dissipated. When she reappeared, her body was still very condensed. When Li Mu healed the white snake, the mana in his body was still very weak. The current him was no longer the same as before. He could better display the effects of the Heart Sutra. Mrs. Chu's injuries were all healed. Li Mu took out a jade stone and said, "This is some soul power I collected. Refine it as soon as possible and advance to the soul realm." Li Mu had originally planned to use the soul force to condense his own soul, but right now, pushing Madame Chu's cultivation to the middle 3 stages was much more meaningful than condensing his own soul. After careful consideration, Li Mu decided to give this opportunity to her. Mrs. Chu bowed and said, "Thank you, Master." She absorbed all the soul power in the jade stone and sent it into the sword again. Li Mu inserted the scabbard, put bai aside, and began to refine the desire in his body. Late at night, just after midnight, Li Mu, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. A yellow light appeared on the surface of his body, and then it completely disappeared into his body. Li Mu let out a long sigh of relief. After more than half a year, he had already condensed 6 of the 7 souls that he had lost. He only lacked the 5th soul, non-poison. Out of the 7 emotions, joy, anger, sorrow, fear, love, disgust, and lust, Li Mu had already fulfilled all 6 of them except for love. So far, Li Mu had not even seen it from Lu Hanyan. This way, if his 7 souls were to be perfected, he could only hope to obtain great love. This kind of great love required the people to love and respect from the bottom of their hearts. Li Mu was a small official, not a parent official. It was even more difficult for him to obtain such great love. However, there was only 1 soul left in the 7 souls. Whether it was condensed or not, it didn't matter much. Mortals could still survive after losing 1 soul. He was a cultivator. The impact of losing 1 soul on his body was minimal. However, Li Mu still yearned for the 7 souls to be complete. Lu Hanyan didn't come over at night. Li Mu was too lazy to cultivate alone. He planned to completely relax and sleep. At this moment he felt a strong call from Bai's sword. Bai's sword had long been refined by Li Mu and was connected to his mind. Li Mu quickly realized that it was Mrs. Chu, who had turned into a sword spirit, calling him. Li Mu stretched out his hand and Bai's sword flew into his hand. He took out the scabbard. After a burst of fog, Mrs. Chu's figure appeared again. At this moment, There was no longer any ghost qi or resentment on her body. Standing in front of Li Mu, she looked like an ordinary weak woman. Other than Mrs. Chu, the only female ghost that could give Li Mu such a feeling was Su He. This meant that she had officially stepped into the soul realm and become a ghost cultivator in the middle realm. However, Mrs. Chu had just stepped into the middle realm. When Li Mu first met Su He, she had already been in the fourth realm for a long time. She was much stronger than the current Mrs. Chu. Li Mu looked at her and said, "Congratulations on successfully entering the soul realm." Mrs. Chu said gratefully, "If it weren't for Master, my soul would have dissipated long ago." A fourth realm ghost cultivator was already considered an expert. It was rare to see one. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon had more than 10 of them under his command. If the county government hadn't noticed, Mrs. Chu would have become his 17th soul realm ghost general. Li Mu asked, "Does Chu Jiang of Gojoseon really have any ulterior motives in the North County all these years?" Mrs. Chu shook her head and said, "I don't know. I only know that Chu Jiang of Gojoseon has been searching for and nurturing soul realm ghost cultivators. Many of his ghost generals used to be wandering ghosts. After they were taken in by him, if they couldn't advance to the soul realm within the time he set, they would have to sacrifice their soul power to other ghost generals. A peak 5th realm Chu Jiang of Gojoseon and more than 10 4th realm ghost generals could already be considered an extremely huge force. If it weren't for the ancestral court of Fu Lu School, Chu Jiang of Gojoseon's power would only be higher than the North County's officials. Although the ancestral court of Fu Lu School was powerful, other than sending low-level disciples to cultivate in the secular world, it wouldn't interfere too much in the secular world. Unless it was a giant of the demonic path like Master Qianhuan, who exceeded the North County's ability to deal with, it would attract the super experts of the Fu Lu School. A small character like Chu Jiang of Gojoseon couldn't attract the attention of the experts of the ancestral court. Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, who kept causing trouble in the North County, was the biggest threat to the North County. There should be many opportunities to deal with him in the future. Although the current Li Mu was still not a match for Chu Jiang of Gojoseon, he wasn't afraid of him. He looked at Madame Chu and said, "Enter the sword and try to transmit your spiritual power to me through Bai." After a moment, feeling the surging spiritual power in his body that was about to overflow, Li Mu's heart was filled with pride. Although Madame Chu's strength was far from Su He's, she was still at the fourth realm. She had already recognized Li Mu as her master and was willing to become Bai's sword spirit. With the connection between the two, Li Mu could borrow her spiritual power without being possessed. As long as Bai was in his hands, he could enter the fourth realm at any time and use all kinds of Dao techniques to display the strength of the fifth realm. Of course, other people's power was ultimately other people's. He couldn't slack off on his own cultivation. When he reached the middle realm with his own strength, he would truly have the capital to establish himself in this world where demonic ghosts ran rampant and countless experts. Chapter 151. Li Mu thought that his cultivation speed was already fast enough, but when he saw Li Si again, he found that his 7 souls had all been refined. There was no difficulty in refining the soul and condensing the soul. As long as one had enough courage and soul power, it was not difficult to cross 2 realms in half a month. However, this required a large amount of resources. For an ordinary person without any background to collect these resources, it was much more difficult than cultivating step by step. However, Li Mu did not envy him. While Li Si's cultivation was rapidly increasing, the weight on his body was not light. There was no free lunch in the world. If one wanted to gain something, they had to lose something else. He gained money, power, and women, but lost his freedom. However, Li Si did not seem to care about this. Li Mu often saw him and Chen Miao Miao appearing together. The smile on his face was much more than before, as if he was a different person. It seemed that he had really found his love. Speaking of love, Li Mu was a little confused. Of the 7 emotions, the only one he lacked was love. However, he had never felt this kind of feeling from anyone until now. Even Lu Hanyan was no exception. Li Mu even suspected that she did not actually like him, but simply lusted after his body. He could not figure out this question and planned to ask Li Si. What is love? Li Si leaned back in his chair and shook his head at Li Mu. This question is very profound and there is more than one answer. You need to discover it yourself. Li Mu asked, is it not love when two people who like each other are together? Li Si patted his shoulder and said meaningfully, like is like, love is love. Like is possession. Love is giving. Like is unbridled and willful. Love is restraint and tolerance. After you and Lady Lu get married and spend a few years together, you will naturally understand. Li Mu understood Li Si's meaning. At first sight, there is liking, but after a long time, there will be love. If Lu Hanyan wasn't so beautiful, didn't have such a great figure, wasn't the shopkeeper of the Yunyan Pavilion, didn't have a pure Yin body, and wasn't so multi-talented, Li Mu would still like her. Then it would be true love. Right now, the relationship between the two of them was merely liking each other. Love would only develop after a long period of time. Love wasn't something that could be created overnight. He still needed to cultivate feelings with her. With nothing to do in the yamen, Li Mu used the excuse of patrolling to go to Yunyan Pavilion. There were only 2 branches of the Yunyan Pavilion in the county city. One was a bookstore, and the other was a tea house where storytelling was the main business. With the help of the Su family, the 2 branches opened smoothly without any obstacles. Although business was temporarily slow, the bookstore would soon become popular with a few best-selling books such as Strange Stories from a Strange Story and Confucius Does Not Speak in Xianxia County. On the other hand, business in the tea house was very average. Without good stories and a storyteller with great storytelling skills, very few people would specially come here to drink tea. Li Mu went to the bookstore first. Zhang Shan told him that Lu Hanyan was in the tea house. Li Mu walked into the tea house and saw that there were only a few guests sitting in the tea house. The storyteller on the stage wasn't in a very good mood. Lu Hanyan sat in a corner, frowning in deep thought. Li Mu walked over and sat beside her. Lu Hanyan instinctively moved to the side. When she turned her head and saw that it was Li Mu, she moved her butt back. The tea house was very quiet. She asked in a small voice, "Why are you here?" Li Mu held her hand and said, "I missed you." Lu Hanyan's face was glowing. She allowed Li Mu to hold her hand. She looked at the storyteller on the stage and said, "Business in the prefecture capital is really difficult. The tea house is losing money every day. Very few of the guests who came to the tea house actually came to drink tea. Most of them came to listen to some novel stories to pass the time." Before the Yunyan Pavilion moved in, the market of the tea houses in the prefecture capital had already been divided up by a few families. It was not easy to snatch a fixed source of customers from them. Li Mu smiled and said, "At the crucial moment, you still have to rely on me, right?" In Xianxia County, if it weren't for Li Mu, the Yunyan Pavilion wouldn't have been so popular. The guests in the tea house were also exchanged for by Li Mu using one unusual story after another, one exciting chapter after another, risking his life. Others thought that he had hooked up with Lu Hanyan, but few people knew that he was the man behind Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan gently pinched his waist and said, "You're still making sarcastic remarks. Hurry up and think of a solution. If this goes on, the tea house will close. When that time comes, I won't be able to support you." In the tea house, the few guests were somewhat dispirited. In this newly opened tea house, the taste of the tea was acceptable, but the storyteller's story was dull. 2 people finished their tea and directly left. When the others were about to finish their tea and leave, they saw the storyteller on the stage walk down. A waiter carried a screen onto the stage. Not long after, a young voice began to speak from behind the screen. "A water ghost, a young man, an old man who grows grapes. Seems a little interesting." The young man's story was quite interesting. A guest had already stood up and was about to leave. After standing and listening for a while, he sat down again and poured a pot of tea. When Li Mu was in Xianxia County, he had already figured out that those who liked to listen to stories, songs, and operas had their own cliques. Good wine fears no dark alley. As long as there were good stories, songs, and operas that were approved by a few guests, The Yunyan Pavilion's reputation would be spread by word of mouth in a few days. It only took 5 days for the tea house branches in the county city to fill up more than half of the seats during the peak period from the number of guests that could be counted with one hand. On this day, the tea house was even more crowded, because the storyteller had told a story in the past 2 days, and it had reached the most exciting part. After everyone was seated, the young storyteller behind the screen began slowly. Last time, Zhang Luer failed to get Granny Kai to betroth Do Yi to him, so he put poison in the soup and intended to kill Granny Kai. As a result, her father was poisoned to death by mistake. Instead, Zhang Luer falsely accused Do. That muddle-headed county magistrate accepted Zhang Luer's bribe and turned the case into an unjust one. He intended to execute Do. This play, Do Yi's Injustice, tugged at the heartstrings of many guests. As people at the bottom of society, they could empathize with Do Yi's experience. They also urgently hoped that someone could uphold justice for her and punish evil. Those who do good suffer poverty and have a shorter life, while those who do evil enjoy wealth and have a longer life. Heaven and earth, you are afraid of the strong and bully the weak, but it turns out that you are pushing the boat with the current. Heaven and earth, you can't tell good from bad. Heaven and earth, you are wrong to judge the virtuous and foolish. Before Do Yi died, she made 3 vows: blood staining the white cloth, heavy snow falling from the sky, and drought for 3 years. Her cry of grief and indignation moved heaven. Suddenly, the sky above the execution ground was covered with dark clouds, and the sky darkened. The scorching sun in June disappeared, and snowflakes fell from the sky. Frightened, the county magistrate ordered the executioners to carry out the execution immediately. Wherever the saber passed, the head fell to the ground. Do Yi's hot blood sprayed directly onto the white cloth hanging high in the air, and not a single drop fell to the ground. For the next 3 years, there was no rain in Shanyang. When Li Mu walked out from the backstage, the guests sitting below the stage were still sitting there in a daze. None of them left. This time, he did not suddenly stop at the most exciting part of the story. The spirit of the concealed arrow had been condensed, and the anger of these people did not have as much effect on him as before. Li Mu stood at the entrance of the tea house, and did not go out because it was raining outside. When he was telling the story on the stage, there was a sudden burst of thunder outside, and it started to rain heavily. At this moment, the rain was much lighter. Under the eaves of the shops on the street, there were pedestrians taking shelter from the rain. There were also passers-by who did not have time to escape, and were completely drenched, cursing as they walked on the street. In the corner of the roof of the tea house, there were 2 figures curled up. One was a skinny old man, and the other was a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Both of them were dressed in rags, and the girl was holding a broken bowl in her hand. They should be beggars who were temporarily taking shelter from the rain. It seemed that they disliked them for being too dirty, and the passers-by who were taking shelter from the rain were not willing to get too close to them. Li Mu took out a piece of broken silver and put it in the bowl. The 2 hurriedly thanked him. 2 days ago, the weather had turned cold, and the 2 were drenched in the rain. Li Mu saw them curled up in the corner, shivering. He walked in again, took a pot of hot tea and 2 bowls, and handed them to them. He said, "Drink a cup of tea to warm up. It's free." The girl was stunned. She had been hiding outside and eavesdropping, and the kind man in front of her had the same voice as the storyteller. She quickly reacted and knelt down to kowtow to him. She said, "Thank you, benefactor." "Thank you, benefactor." Li Mu waved his hand, held up the umbrella, and walked to the county government. Several patrolling constables walked into the government office awkwardly and muttered, "Why did it rain so suddenly?" There was no sign at all. Outside the county city, several women who were washing clothes by the stream were suddenly drenched by the heavy rain. Their clothes became translucent, faintly revealing their bloated figures. A shabby Taoist priest in rags was among them. He was talking and laughing with them, and his eyes were looking around. The women did not avoid him. From time to time, they would pull their clothes and tease him. The old Taoist priest looked at it for a while and felt bored. It was still raining. He looked up at the gloomy sky, counted with his fingers, and said in surprise, "My dear mother, This rain is not right. Chapter 152. It shouldn't be raining today. This rain actually contains the power of heaven and earth. Who caused it? Damn it, this North County is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Looks like I'll have to stay here for a few more days to observe. Lao Dao pinched the sky and muttered to himself. A woman said, "Old pervert, what are you muttering about?" Lao Dao collected his thoughts and smiled. "Are you going to buy the talisman I mentioned just now? It's very effective. Everyone who's used it says it's good." Li Mu walked into the county office. Not long after, Constable Zhao came to the office. "There's something wrong with this rain." He wiped the rainwater off his face and said, "The county governor said that it shouldn't be raining these few days. Something must have happened." Li Mu asked suspiciously, "What kind of matter can affect the heavens and rain?" Constable Zhao said, "There are many. Cultivators who condense their spirits can summon the wind and fog. Cultivators who condense their spirits can even pray for the sun and rain. Every time a new Dao technique or abhijna is born, there will be a heavenly vision." Li Mu was shocked. Only then did he realize a problem. The heaven and earth of this world was not the sky and earth that he saw. A cultivator's Dao oath was made to heaven and earth. If they violated it, they would be punished by heaven. In other words, heaven was watching what people did. Just now, he used Do Yi's story to scold the heaven and earth for bullying the weak and fearing the strong. It couldn't be that this rain was because of this, right? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. It seemed that the time when the rain was the heaviest was when he talked about Do Yi's vow. Li Mu immediately made up his mind. That line had to be changed. It was enough to scold the corrupt officials. It was best not to involve heaven and earth in everything. If heaven was unhappy with him and struck down lightning, it would be too late for him to regret. Fortunately, the rain didn't last long. Within a quarter of an hour after Li Mu returned to the county yamen, the sky cleared up again. The sky was blue and there wasn't even a cloud in sight. If it weren't for the wet puddles on the ground, no one would have thought that it had just rained. When Constable Zhao left the watchroom, he instructed Li Mu, "You stay here and don't leave the yamen. In a while, everyone will follow the county governor to pay respects to the national temple." Every county in the Great Zhou dynasty had a state temple. Li Mu had been to Xianxia County once, but the state temple in Xianxia County could not be compared to the one in the county capital. This was a large hall that occupied a large area. Although it only had one floor, it was at least 30 feet tall. The first thing that came into sight when they walked into the national temple were 3 towering statues. The moment they stepped into the national temple, they would have the urge to kneel down and worship them. There were hundreds of prayer mats in the hall, and the people of the North County were kneeling on them. The people lined up and walked in from the entrance. After paying their respects, they walked out from the exit. Li Mu noticed that almost 90% of the people would produce a bit of psychokinesis in their bodies when they paid their respects to the 3 statues. The psychokinesis would be absorbed by the 3 statues. The national temple was similar to temples and Taoist temples. As long as people paid their respects sincerely, psychokinesis would be produced. Those who didn't produce psychokinesis would definitely be dissatisfied with the imperial court or the local government. This was unavoidable. Even the national temple couldn't force the people to worship it. To a certain extent, the proportion of people who produced psychokinesis represented the people's sentiment in the imperial court. When the people of an area paid their respects to the national temple, the proportion of people who produced psychokinesis was an important indicator to assess the achievements of the local officials. If the law and order of a place was good and the people lived and worked in peace, they would naturally have confidence in the imperial court. However, if the local officials were merciless and treated the people badly, causing them to complain and living in poverty, they wouldn't produce much psychokinesis. The people of the county government paid their respects to the national temple firstly to pay their respects and secondly to observe the people's sentiment. From the situation at the scene, only a small number of people didn't produce psychokinesis. This also meant that the people trusted the North County government very much. Li Mu looked at the three statues in the hall and asked, "Who are these three people?" Constable Zhao looked at him and asked, "Have you never been here before?" Li Mu shook his head. "No." Constable Zhao said in surprise, "Even if you haven't been here before, you should have seen the portraits of Emperor Taizu, Wu Zong, and Emperor Wen, right?" After Constable Zhao's reminder, Li Mu finally found information about the three statues in his mind. Emperor Taizu was the founding emperor of the Great Zhou dynasty. He conquered the territory of the Great Zhou dynasty and divided it into 36 counties. During Emperor Wu Zong's reign, he used iron and blood to sweep away the turmoil in the country and intimidate the neighboring countries so that they didn't dare to invade. After Wu Zong's reign, the power of the Great Zhou dynasty grew rapidly and deterred everyone. The last Emperor Wen, who ruled for 50 years, worked hard to govern the country. He purged the imperial court, and the people of the 36 counties of the Great Zhou dynasty were at peace. His famous rule of Emperor Wen had been influential to this day. These three were all emperors with outstanding contributions in the history of the Great Zhou dynasty. They were qualified to have their statues erected in the national temple and receive the worship of the people of the Great Zhou dynasty. A constable looked at the statues of the three emperors and couldn't help but feel admiration. Then, a trace of unwillingness appeared on his face and he said in a low voice, "Emperor Taizu, Wu Zong, Emperor Wen, what kind of heroes are they?" The Shao dynasty has lasted for hundreds of years, but in the end, it was stolen by a woman with a different surname. "Shut up." Constable Zhao slapped him hard on the head and said, "You dare to say anything? If you want to die, don't drag us down with you." Li Mu raised his head and looked at the statues of the three emperors. He didn't feel anything special in his heart. The current empress was the first empress since the establishment of the Great Zhou dynasty. In the hearts of the people of the Great Zhou dynasty, this was tantamount to going against the moral principles. It was still unacceptable to them. However, to Li Mu, it was not unprecedented for a woman to be an empress. It was also not something that was unacceptable. He followed the prefectural governor and paid his respects to the statues of the three emperors in a not-so-sincere manner. After returning to the yamen, he learned about the new task from Constable Zhao. In the process of paying their respects to the national temple, the people in a certain area did not have any psychokinesis. After investigating, the yamen found that these people were all from Yang County. They learned from these people that a plague had broken out in a few villages in Yang County. However, the Yang County government did nothing and allowed the plague to spread, causing the people of Yang County to panic. Yang County and Yu County happened to be the two counties that Constable Zhao was in charge of. Early the next morning, he would bring a few people to Yang County to investigate the situation. Li Mu would also go with them. Although Yang County was not far from the prefectural capital, considering that it would take time to complete the task, they might not be able to make it back by tomorrow night. During dinner, Li Mu told Yu Han-yun about the business trip tomorrow. After dinner, she helped Li Mu pack a small bag and said, "I don't know how long it will take for you to come back. I've packed 2 sets of clothes for you to change into. When the time comes, just bring back the dirty clothes you changed into. Be careful outside." Li Mu was not worried about his own safety at all. With Bai Yi in hand, unless King Chujiang personally came, normal demonic ghosts and heretical cultivation would not pose much of a threat to him. However, he was still worried about them. Although he had already taught Yu Han-yun the thunder technique and weapon manipulation, she lacked experience in fighting enemies. If she encountered danger, she might not be able to use her full strength. However, nothing should happen in the prefectural capital. Li Mu had already instructed Li Si to keep an eye on them. He also told Little White to stay in her room and not run around. She was now at the crucial moment of her transformation. The demonic qi in her body was chaotic. Li Mu had pasted aura concealment talismans outside her room. Every night, he would use Buddhist mana to help her tidy up her body so that her demonic qi could be suppressed. Because of this, he had not dual cultivated with Yu Han-yun for a few days. In the morning, Li Mu opened his eyes and sat up in bed. Yesterday, he had helped Little White suppress her demonic qi until late at night. His mana was almost exhausted. He did not cultivate but went straight to bed with his clothes on. Li Mu was about to get out of bed when his right hand accidentally touched a smooth body. Li Mu's first thought was that Yu Hanyun had done something to him while he was asleep last night. However, when he looked down, he realized that his clothes were still intact. It was exactly the same as before he went to bed last night. He slowly turned his head and saw an unfamiliar girl lying on his bed without a stitch of clothing. The girl was about 18 or 19 years old. She had a head of black hair and a beautiful face. Even with her eyes closed, her entire body was filled with charm. Li Mu sat on the bed and his mind went blank. Why aren't you up yet? Don't you still have to go to Yang County? Yu Hanyun walked to the door and opened it with her mana. When she saw the scene on the bed, she was stunned. Chapter 153. Li Mu looked at the unfamiliar girl on the bed and then looked at Lu Hanyun, who was standing at the door with tears in her eyes. His lips moved as he wanted to explain, but he didn't know what to say. He had been caught red-handed in bed. What else could he explain? Although even Li Mu himself didn't know why this young girl would appear on his bed, he didn't know. Lu Hanyun didn't say anything. She wiped her tears and turned to run away. Chasing after his future wife was more important. Li Mu didn't care about what was going on with the girl on the bed. He quickly chased after her without even wearing shoes. As soon as Lu Hanyun ran into the yard, Li Mu caught up with her and hugged her from behind. Li Mu hugged her tightly and hurriedly said, "Don't be angry. Let me explain." Lu Hanyun didn't struggle. 2 streams of tears flowed down her cheeks. She choked and said, "I saw it with my own eyes. What else do you have to explain? Isn't it enough for you to do whatever you want outside? You actually brought her home," Li Mu said with a wry smile. "I don't know who she is. I saw her when I opened my eyes this morning. Do you believe what you're saying?" Li Mu didn't know how to explain. Suddenly, a vague voice came from behind him. The girl walked out of the room naked and barefoot. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and looked at Li Mu and Lu Hanyun. She asked in confusion, "Benefactor, Sister Lu, what are you doing?" Hearing this extremely familiar voice, Li Mu turned around and was stunned. He said in surprise, "Xiao Bai?" The next moment, his vision went black. Lu Hanyun had covered his eyes from behind. Lu Hanyun's face turned red. She said angrily, "Xiao Bai, quickly go into the room." The girl looked at her and asked in confusion, "Why?" Lu Hanyun said with a red face, "Look down." The girl lowered her head to take a look. After a brief moment of shock, she let out a cry of surprise and her figure instantly disappeared on the spot. A moment later, Li Mu and Lu Hanyun stood in the room, looking at the girl who had wrapped herself in a blanket. They murmured, How did you transform?" I don't know either." The girl's face was bright red as she said, Last night, I just wanted to give it a try and then fell asleep. When I woke up, I became like this." Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyun and said, "Do you believe me this time?" Lu Hanyun was a little ashamed and said, "I'll help her find some clothes." After Xiao Bai transformed, although she wasn't as tall as Li Qing, she was still half a head taller than Wanwan. Wanwan's clothes didn't fit her, so she could only make do with Lu Hanyun's clothes. In Lu Hanyun's room, she stood behind Xiao Bai, helping her comb her hair while looking at the girl's face in the bronze mirror. Even though she was very confident in her appearance, when she saw the girl in front of her, she couldn't help but feel ashamed. The girl in front of her was really the most beautiful girl she had ever seen. Even as a girl, when she saw her naked body, her heart couldn't help but beat faster. Lil. Her lips moved. She suddenly realized that when she was a little fox in the past, she didn't feel anything when he called her Lil White. But now, when he called her Lil White again, he felt a little weird. She secretly looked at her again and asked, "Xiao Bai, what's your name? We can't keep calling you Xiao Bai in the future, right?" The girl smiled and said, "My surname is Su. Big Sister Lu can just call me Xiao Bai in the future." Lu Hanyun helped her comb her hair and couldn't help but say, "Xiao Bai is really beautiful." Xiao Bai said shyly, "Big Sister Lu is the beautiful one." Li Mu stood at the door and said, "You guys stay at home. I'm leaving." Even though Xiaobai's transformation was a happy event, Li Mu was going to Yang County today. He couldn't let Constable Zhao and the others wait for him. Lu Hanyan put down the comb and said, "Xiaobai, sit for a while and stay at home. I'll send him out." Xiaobai nodded obediently. Li Mu walked into the courtyard and said, "It's only a few steps from here to the yamen. You don't have to send me off." Lu Hanyan walked over and helped him tidy up his collar. She asked, "Xiaobai has transformed. Are you very happy?" Li Mu said with lingering fear, "What's there to be happy about? I was almost scared to death by her, and also by you," Lu Hanyan said bitterly. "She was born so beautiful and wholeheartedly wanted to repay your kindness by giving herself to you." Li Mu glanced at her and said, "Aren't you beautiful? Have some confidence in yourself." Lu Hanyan lowered her head and said, "I know I'm not as beautiful as Xiaobai. She's the most beautiful girl I've ever seen." Li Mu stretched out his arms and pulled her into his embrace. He said, "In my eyes, you're the most beautiful. No matter who you compare yourself to, you're always the most beautiful. Don't ever doubt this." Lu Hanyan made a soft sound of acknowledgement. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him gently on the cheek. She said, "Come back soon. We'll wait for you at home." Li Mu returned her kiss before leaving the house and hurrying towards the yamen. Xiaobai's sudden transformation had caught him off guard and almost caused Lu Hanyan to misunderstand. Fortunately, it was more daunting than dangerous and he managed to get through it safely. The only pity was that after Xiaobai transformed, he couldn't always hold her in his arms and play with her like a cat. Not long after Li Mu left, Wan came running in with a lunchbox in her hand. The lunchbox contained the breakfast she had bought. When she saw the unfamiliar girl in the courtyard, she was stunned and asked in confusion, "Miss, who are you looking for?" Li Mu arrived late at the yamen's entrance. When he saw Constable Zhao and the others standing at the yamen's entrance, he hurriedly said, "Sorry, I was delayed by some matters." The constables behind Constable Zhao looked at Li Mu with envy. Constable Zhao pointed at Li Mu's face and shook his head. He said, "I really envy you young people." Li Mu realized something and reached out to wipe the lipstick mark on his face. He said awkwardly, "It's getting late. Let's get going." Other than Li Mu, Constable Zhao had brought 4 other people with him to Yang County. One of them was the determined young man named Lin Yu who had passed the 3 tests with Li Mu and Li Si that day. The other 3 were old men from the yamen. With the speed of a spirit-condensing realm cultivator using a spirit traveling talisman, it would take more than 4 hours to travel from Yang County to the county capital. Everyone had to rest along the way. By the time they reached Yang County, it was already past noon. After reaching Yang County, they didn't go to the yamen. Instead, they went directly to the village where the plague had spread. Cultivators who had refined the 7 spirits were immune to all diseases and evils. Although it was an exaggeration, they were immune to more than 99% of the diseases of mortals. The 6 of them arrived at the village entrance and knocked on a villager's door. Just as they were about to ask about the situation in the village, the villager suddenly fell to the ground unconscious. One of the constables touched his forehead and exclaimed, "It's so hot." Constable Zhao said, "Help him in first." The 2 of them helped the villager into the house. Constable Zhao asked the villager's wife to get a bowl of water and turned a piece of fulu into talisman water. He pinched the villager's mouth and poured the talisman water into his stomach. The villager's complexion improved after the talisman water entered his stomach, but he still didn't wake up. Constable Zhao frowned and said, "How can it be useless?" Li Mu walked forward and said, "Let me try." Although fulu often had mysterious powers, it wasn't omnipotent. Disease-dispelling talismans could cure common diseases such as headaches and fever, colds and diarrhea. However, there were many diseases that couldn't be cured. His hand glowed with a golden light. Under the astonished gazes of Constable Zhao and the others, the golden light was transferred into the villager's body. The villager's pale face gradually turned rosy, and his breathing calmed down. One of the constables touched his forehead again and exclaimed, "It's not hot anymore." Li Mu heaved a sigh of relief. Although the Heart Sutra couldn't directly increase his strength, it was very useful in treating illnesses and saving people. Constable Zhao looked at the villager and muttered, "What kind of plague is it that even the disease-dispelling talisman doesn't work?" The young man named Lin Yu suddenly stretched out his hand and looked at the villager's eyelids and tongue. Finally, he leaned on the villager's chest and listened. His expression gradually became serious and he said, "It's the plague." Chapter 154. Plague. Hearing Lin Yu's words, Constable Zhao's heart skipped a beat. His face immediately darkened. "Are you sure?" Li Mu could clearly feel Constable Zhao's nervousness and knew why he was so nervous. Cultivators had created all kinds of supernatural powers and fulu pills that could cure hundreds of diseases and save thousands of lives. However, they were not omnipotent. Although the cultivators themselves would not contract certain human diseases such as the plague, they were powerless when they encountered them. They could only watch as the patient's illnesses worsened and they died. In the past, the imperial court's method of dealing with the plague was to completely seal off the infected areas. Once all the infected people died, the plague would naturally stop spreading. Lin Yu nodded solemnly and said, "I'm sure it's the plague. I used to practice medicine with my master and encountered it before." Constable Zhao hurriedly asked, "Is there a way to save it?" Lin Yu shook his head and said, "Fulu is useless for this disease. Whether the infected can survive depends on God's will. Unless you encounter a medical expert or use a heaven-grade fulu to help them reconstruct their bodies." Li Mu did not expect the plague to be so troublesome. The heaven-grade fulu had the power of creation. When Wu Bo's heart was crushed by senior brother Qin, he could also regenerate his body. Naturally, it was not a problem for him to treat and save people. The problem was that it was unrealistic to have a heaven-grade fulu for each of the infected people in Yang County. It was impossible to even get one, let alone one. Since the rise of Buddhism, schools of cultivation such as medicine, painting, and music gradually declined. Now, even preserving their orthodoxy was a problem. It was not easy to encounter a plague. Constable Zhao looked at Li Mu and asked nervously, "Can you save them?" Li Mu had full confidence in the Buddhist light of the Heart Sutra. He said, "I'll try my best. The plan now is to isolate the villages where the epidemic happened as soon as possible. No one is allowed to enter or leave. Then, gather the sick people together and try to prevent more people from being infected." Lin Yu nodded repeatedly and said, "Big Brother Li, you're right. Apart from that, we must exterminate the rats as soon as possible to prevent the plague from spreading further." Constable Zhao first ordered a bailiff to return to the county yamen to report the situation. Then, he asked someone to find the village chief and block the roads at the entrance and end of the village, forbidding anyone from entering or leaving. Then, he began to investigate the epidemic situation in the village. The other two constables took on the responsibility of exterminating the rats. Lin Yu asked them to dig a big pit in the village. Then, they filled the pit with water and poured an unknown powder into it. After the powder was mixed in, it emitted a faint fragrance. Soon, the crowd heard the sound of footsteps. Gray or black rats appeared from all corners of the village and jumped into the puddles one after another. After jumping into the puddle, they did not struggle and floated quietly on the surface of the water. After a while, the puddle was full of floating rats, and there were no more rats around. One of the bailiffs threw out a fulu, and the puddle was set ablaze. All the rat corpses were incinerated. In order to completely eradicate the plague, they had to cut off the source of the plague. After a few people investigated, they found that the infection in the village was not serious. Only 10 villagers were infected. Constable Zhao gathered the 10 people together. Lin Yu went out once and found some herbs. He boiled them into a pot and distributed the decoction to the villagers who were not infected. Li Mu did not stay idle either. After the 10 people were cleansed by his light of Buddha, their symptoms gradually disappeared. Li Mu obtained a lot of merit from them, but he also used up a lot of his mana. This made him envious of Buddhism, Taoism, and the imperial family. If he wanted to obtain merit or psychokinesis, he had to do it himself. He used up his mana to treat the sick and heal the wounded. They only had to build a Taoist palace, a temple, a national temple, and erect a few statues or stone tablets to obtain the psychokinesis and merit from the people. In the Great Zhou, only Buddhism, Taoism, and the imperial court had such special privileges. If other people or forces dared to build temples privately, accept the worship of the people, and absorb the merit and psychokinesis, they would be destroyed as heretical cultivation. Therefore, he could only envy them in his heart. After treating these people, Li Mu sat on the side to rest. Perhaps they had discovered it early, but no one in this village had died of the disease. In order not to delay, they had to go to the next village in 15 minutes. Lin Yu took advantage of the free time to come over and asked, "Brother Li, are you a dual cultivator of Buddhism and Taoism?" Li Mu also just found out that this young man was a descendant of the school of medicine. He nodded at him and did not deny it. Lin Yu chatted with Li Mu for a while, mainly out of curiosity about his light of Buddha. After asking Li Mu a few questions, he stopped talking and sat quietly in the corner. He took out a cloth bag from his sleeve. When he opened the cloth bag, Li Mu saw that there were dozens of silver needles of different lengths and thicknesses in the bag. Lin Yu took out a silver needle and inserted his mana into it. He then inserted the needle into an acupuncture point on his wrist. Soon, he had inserted more than 10 silver needles into his body. There were all kinds of cultivation methods in this world, not just Buddhism and Taoism. It was normal for there to be some that he had not seen before. After arranging everything in this village, they did not delay and immediately rushed to the next village. When they arrived at the entrance of the village, they saw the villagers in a confrontation with more than 10 constables. The constables all used black cloth to cover their noses and mouths. They held weapons in their hands and pointed at the villagers from afar. They shouted, "Your village has been infected with the plague. We are under the orders of the county magistrate to seal this village. No one is allowed to enter or leave." A group of people gathered at the entrance of the village, their faces filled with grief and anger. The leader of the group, an old man, said in a trembling voice, "There are dozens of families in the village. You don't care about the sick and only sealed the village. You are forcing the villagers to die." The constables said loudly, "The county magistrate said that sacrificing your village in exchange for the safety of the entire county is worth it. Do you want to implicate the county, or even the entire North County?" "Bastard!" Constable Zhao sent the constable flying with a kick. He said angrily, "Is this how you treat the people?" The constable got up from the ground and said angrily, "Who are you? How dare you interfere with our work? Are you blind?" Behind Constable Zhao, an old constable from the county government kicked him to the ground again and said, "Get lost. You have no right to speak here. Go and call your lord here." The constable was about to curse again, but when he saw their clothes, he quickly swallowed the curse words that were about to come out of his mouth. The lord could afford to offend the people from the county government, but he, a lowly constable, could not. After getting up from the ground, he hurriedly led the group away. Constable Zhao walked to the entrance of the village and said to the old man, "We are constables from the county government. We are here specifically for this plague. Old man, how is the situation in the village?" Hearing that the county government had arrived, the villagers hurriedly welcomed them into the village. When they were in the previous village, they had already discussed a series of procedures to control the epidemic. First of all, in order to prevent the epidemic from spreading, the village had to be sealed. However, the infected people could not be ignored. They had to be quarantined and treated those who were already infected. They also had to prevent new infected people from appearing. The division of labor was clear. Lin Yu and the others were in charge of exterminating the rats, while Li Mu was in charge of saving people. Fortunately, no one had died in this village so far. This should be great news. According to Lin Yu, the plague was just a general term for the plague spread by rats. There were more than 10 types of the plague that had been discovered. Each type had a different fatality rate, different harm to the human body, and different medicines were used to treat it. For this type of plague, none of the infected people had died. This meant that its harm was not that great. At least, the patients would not die in a short period of time. This gave them enough time to treat them. Li Mu had just saved 10 people. He had used up some of his mana and had not fully recovered yet. There were more infected people in this village, a total of 26. Li Mu saved another 10 people and felt that his mana was overdrawn. When he stood up, his body swayed and he almost fell. Constable Zhao quickly supported him and said, "You should rest for a while. This time, we are relying on you." Li Mu also wanted to rest. However, from the moment he saved the first person, an endless stream of virtuous thought power gushed out from these patients, from their relatives, and from the people of this village. The mana in Li Mu's body was circulating faster than it had ever been. This was a real and miraculous power that could increase the speed of cultivation. Once he started, he did not want to stop. Li Mu gritted his teeth and said firmly, "Help me up. I can still save." Chapter 155. Li Mu forced himself to save a few more people. Finally, he could not squeeze out a single drop of mana. Constable Zhao helped him sit down and handed him a piece of spiritual jade. The rest of the patients have mild symptoms. Their lives will not be in danger for the time being. You should recover your mana first. It won't be too late to save them later. Li Mu held the spiritual jade in his hand and meditated. At the same time, he was observing the psyche power in his body. This power was not like soul power and charisma, which could be refined directly by him. Instead, it was hidden in his body. After he rested for a while, a group of people walked in from outside the village. The village had been completely sealed off. An old official from the county government stood at the entrance of the village and said sternly, "Halt." A stout man in official robes looked at him and said, "I am the county magistrate of Yang County. Is Constable Zhao here?" Constable Zhao walked out and saluted the stout man. "Greetings, County Magistrate Chen." County Magistrate Chen smiled and said, "There is no need to trouble Constable Zhao to come here personally for such a small matter." Constable Zhao said coldly, "If I didn't come here personally, County Magistrate Chen would have sealed off all the people in the village, wouldn't he?" County Magistrate Chen shook his head and said, "No one wanted such a thing to happen. Once the plague spreads, it will cause an even greater disaster. As a county magistrate, 100 or so lives are nothing compared to 1,000 or 10,000 lives. I have to look at the big picture. I believe that even the imperial court can understand my actions." Constable Zhao did not say much. Strictly speaking, County Magistrate Chen did not do anything wrong in this matter. However, as long as the local magistrate still had a conscience, he would not treat the lives of 100 or so people under his jurisdiction as a cold number. In his eyes, there was probably only political achievement. Constable Zhao said calmly, "The epidemic in this village has been controlled. There is still a way to save the plague. The county government will deal with the epidemic in Yang County. You don't have to worry about it anymore." County Magistrate Chen smiled and said, "That would be for the best. If Constable Zhao needs any help, just let me know." With that, he left with the group of Yamen runners. The villagers knelt on the ground and kowtowed a few times to Li Mu and the others. The village chief breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Thank you for saving our lives. Otherwise, the county magistrate would really let all of us die." Li Mu recovered his magic power and continued to save people. In the process of saving people, he learned that the county magistrate of Yang County did not have a good reputation in the county. The citizens were quite critical of him. Arrestor Zhao sighed and said, "It's really hard for the people of Yang County to have such a parental official." Li Mu had just heard that County Magistrate Chen was inactive and lazy in his administration. He had his ways of exploiting the people and had even disregarded human lives. As he used Buddha's light to save people, he asked, "Isn't County Governor going to do anything about it?" "I can't do anything about it." Arrestor Zhao shook his head and said, "He has people in the imperial court. County Governor has also reported this to the imperial court several times, but it was suppressed." Li Mu could understand this point. The position of county magistrate was not high, but it was not low either. At the very least, The chief official of a county did not have the power to appoint or dismiss a county magistrate. Only the imperial court had this power. Even if it was just a small county magistrate, as long as he had people in the upper echelons, even the county governor could not easily touch him. After saving the last person, Arrestor Zhao said to Li Mu, "You rest here first. I'll go to the village ahead with them to take a look." Li Mu said, "It's okay, I can still do it." Although he wanted to rest, saving people was more important. The village ahead was the source of the plague. The epidemic was even more serious and patients could die at any time. Compared to human lives, his tiredness was nothing. Arrestor Zhao tried to persuade Li Mu, but seeing that he insisted, he did not try to persuade him anymore. The few of them arranged everything and left the village. As for the situation of the few villages ahead, they had already made some preparations in their hearts. However, when they arrived at the next village a few miles away, the scene in front of them was beyond everyone's expectations. The village did not have the tension and panic of a plague. At the entrance of the village, there was a large pot with black medicinal concoction boiling in it. The villagers of this village were lined up in an orderly manner, and each person scooped a bowl of medicinal concoction from the pot. Arrestor Zhao walked to the side of a villager and asked, "How is the plague in the village?" That person revealed a smile and said, "Originally, more than half of the people were sick and everyone thought that the village was finished. Fortunately, a godly doctor came and said that it was the plague. He gave us a wonderful prescription and we followed the prescription to get the medicine. That's how everyone was cured." Lin Yu thought for a moment and asked curiously, "Can I take a look at this prescription?" The villager looked troubled. He thought for a moment and said, "This, I'll have to ask the godly doctor." He strode away and quickly came back. He said embarrassedly, "The godly doctor said that this prescription is only for this type of plague. If there's no cure for the disease, the antidote will become poison. Once it's spread out and used by quacks, it will lead to a disaster." Lin Yu looked apologetic and said, "I'm sorry for being rude." He walked to the large pot at the entrance of the village and looked at it. Then he lined up and scooped a bowl of soup. After tasting it, he walked to Li Mu and the others and said doubtfully, "That's strange. These are the most basic and common soups for clearing heat and detoxifying. How can they be useful for the plague?" Arrestor Zhao smiled and said, "There are so many prescriptions in the world. How can you know all of them? It doesn't matter if it's common or uncommon. As long as it can cure the plague, it's a good medicine." He leaned against a tree at the entrance of the village and let out a long sigh. He said, "It's good that everything's fine." "It's good that everything's fine," Li Mu had already asked around. Because of the godly doctor's appearance, the infected villagers in the previous few villages had all been cured. No one had died. The godly doctor's timely appearance had allowed him to complete his task ahead of time. He might even be able to return to the county capital today. It was a pity that if Li Mu had personally saved the patients in these few villages, the amount of virtuous thought power he could obtain would be incomparably huge. Li Mu leaned against a big tree at the entrance of the village to rest. Suddenly, he felt a familiar energy fluctuation. It was the fluctuation of virtuous thought power. He silently chanted the clear heart mantra and felt this energy from all the villagers. However, this virtuous thought power did not belong to him, so Li Mu could not absorb it. It was produced from the villagers' bodies and surged towards a certain place. Li Mu looked over and saw a middle-aged man in a gray robe walking out of the village, surrounded by a crowd. A few of the villagers asked, "Godly doctor, are you leaving?" The middle-aged man nodded and said, "The plague here has been resolved. It's a matter of life and death. I still have to go to other villages to prevent more people from suffering." The villager walked over and held a cloth bag. He said, "The Zhou family village has no way to repay the godly doctor's kindness for saving our lives. We have gathered some money to express our sincerity. Please accept it." The middle-aged man shook his head and smiled. He said, "A doctor has a benevolent heart. I didn't save people for this. You can take this money back." The villager insisted a few times, but he was rejected by the godly doctor. The villager could only give up. He turned around and said to the villagers, The godly doctor will not accept the money. Everyone kowtowed to the godly doctor to thank him. As soon as he finished speaking, all the villagers at the entrance of the Zhou family village knelt down and kowtowed 3 times respectfully to the godly doctor. Li Mu noticed that even more virtuous thought power floated out from their bodies and surged into the godly doctor's body. He was a little envious of this scene, but not jealous. He saved the dying and healed the injured for free. This godly doctor had a benevolent heart and deserved their cow. This godly doctor had a noble character. He gave Li Mu the feeling that he was a cultivator. Li Mu habitually used his heavenly eye to observe for a while, and then couldn't help but be stunned. The godly doctor's body was surrounded by a demonic aura. He was actually a demon. However, the demonic aura on his body was clear and pure without any impurities. He walked the path of righteous cultivation. In the eyes of the people, demons were strange creatures that harmed people. However, many demons were very pure and kind. They worshipped Buddhism and were kinder than humans. Instead, it was the human heart that made people more fearful. This godly doctor's cultivation was clearly much stronger than Li Mu's. He was at least a 4th-level demon cultivator. Li Mu could see his demonic aura, but he couldn't see through his true body. He was curious. He held Bai in his hand and secretly communicated with Madame Chu. She passed a portion of her dermic powers to Li Mu through the scabbard. After a while, Li Mu felt that his body was filled with dermic powers. He used his heavenly eye again and looked at the godly doctor. In front of the Zhou family village's people stood a monster in gray clothes. The demon had the body of a human and the head of a rat. Chapter 156. The miracle-working doctor who saved lives and healed the wounded was a monster. This was not something that would make Li Mu feel strange. He did not have any prejudice against demons and ghosts. Whether it was Xiao Bai, the little snake, or the bull spirit and tiger spirit that Li Mu met, they were all demons, but they did not do anything to harm people. However, the miracle doctor who had cured the plague was a rat demon. This was a little thought-provoking. The miracle doctor had already walked far away when Lin Yu suddenly said, "I think there's something wrong with this miracle doctor." Constable Zhao was stunned and asked, "What's the problem?" Lin Yu looked at the big pot and said, "I saw the herbs in the pot. They are all heat-clearing and detoxifying herbs. If these herbs could cure the plague, there wouldn't have been so many deaths in the past." Constable Zhao was surprised and said, "You mean these people were not cured?" Lin Yu shook his head and said, "I've seen these people. They have indeed recovered, but it was not because of this pot of herbs. It was because of other reasons. No matter what, that miracle doctor is definitely not as simple as he looks." Li Mu thought for a while and said, "I also think that we should observe more. Even if there's nothing wrong with that miracle doctor, if the plague recurs, we might have to do it again." "That's true." Constable Zhao nodded and said, "Everyone has worked hard today, especially Li Mu. Let's go to the county first and wait for a few days." When they arrived at the county, Constable Zhao found an inn and prepared a few rooms for them. Everyone, including Constable Zhao, shared a room in pairs. Li Mu had a room to himself so that he could have a good rest. If the plague recurred, they still needed him to treat and save people. Tai Wei Xian Palace, Yuhuang Shiqing, inner refinement of the 3 souls, fetal light tranquility. At night, Li Mu sat cross-legged on the bed and recited the soul condensation spell. Today was the 3rd night of the lunar month. It was the best time to condense the soul. Just after midnight, Li Mu opened his eyes and a shadow floated out of his body. With a thought, the shadow floated back into his body. Before tonight, his Fa Li was comparable to a soul condensation cultivator, but it wasn't until just now that he refined the soul of fetal light, making it more condensed and able to freely enter and leave his body. As for the magic power in his body, after refining the first soul, it also increased by a level. With the massive increase in his magic power, he felt that he could attempt to cast the 3rd mantra. Li Mu made a gesture with one hand and silently chanted the fighting mantra. Nothing strange happened around him, but Li Mu could acutely feel that his body seemed to have undergone some subtle changes. Li Mu picked up Bai Yi and subconsciously swung his sword. All the sword moves he had learned before suddenly appeared in his mind again. They connected perfectly. Li Mu's body swung his sword uncontrollably. Like moving clouds and flowing water, he connected all the sword moves one by one. At this moment, a thought appeared in Li Mu's mind. Even if he were to fight with Li Qing, he was confident that he could win. Although the power of the fighting mantra was not obvious, it raised Li Mu's battle instincts and awareness to the limit. Li Mu had never heard of any supernatural powers or mantras that could achieve this. He was looking forward to the 6 syllables of the Sanskrit mantra. However, he had long realized that the 9 syllables of the Sanskrit mantra was harder to cast. He might have to wait until he concentrated before he could master the next word. The reason why he could refine the first soul tonight was mostly because of the virtuous willpower he absorbed during the day. This made Li Mu think of the rat demon. For demons, this kind of power was also beneficial to their cultivation. The rat demon's demonic aura was pure. It had never eaten human blood and did not have the slightest bit of resentment on its body. It had also never been tainted by human blood. However, if the rat demon was the one who spread the plague and turned into a divine doctor, directing and acting a good show to absorb the courage of the people, even if it did not cause any deaths, it would have violated the laws of the Great Zhou and would not be tolerated by the government. Of course, this was only Li Mu's guess. Whether or not the divine doctor was a problem remained to be seen. Outside, without Lu Hanyan to dual cultivate with, he could not play with Xiao Bai. After a busy day, Li Mu was physically and mentally exhausted. He did not continue to meditate and went to sleep with his clothes on. The next day, the constable that Constable Zhao had sent back to the county yamen to report returned with 2 more people. These 2 people were 2 of the 6 constables in the county yamen. One of them was surnamed Xian and the other was surnamed Sunday. The plague was not a joke. Every time it broke out, countless people would die. The county governor obviously attached great importance to it. 3 of the 6 constables in the county yamen had already arrived. Constable Zhao came down from upstairs and said to the 2, "You came at the right time. The situation in Yang County is a little strange. I suspect that the cause of this plague is not so simple." After a while, Constable Qian frowned and asked, "You mean that someone created this plague?" Constable Zhao nodded and said, "That divine doctor's actions are suspicious and worth paying attention to. Moreover, this plague has already appeared for a few days, but not a single person has died. When have you ever seen a plague outbreak without people dying?" Constable Sun stroked the short beard on his chin and said, "If that's the case, then it's a little strange." For the next 2 days, keep a close eye on that divine doctor's whereabouts and see what else he'll do. In the next 2 days, 3 more villages within Yang County's borders were infected with the plague. Although Li Mu and the others had done their best to quarantine the villages and prevent the spread of the plague to the greatest extent, considering that the patients would have an incubation period, it was possible that there were already carriers of the plague in other villages before they arrived. Coincidentally, every time a plague outbreak broke out in a village, the divine doctor would appear. After treating the people in the village, he would move on to the next village. He would travel in a straight line along the official road, and the plague would also break out in a straight line. Along the way, it would break out and be treated by him. If at this time, the people still had not discovered the abnormality, then they would be constables in vain. The outbreak of a plague usually spread in all directions from the place of origin. It was impossible for it to break out in a straight line like this. Moreover, the death rate of the plague was extremely high. In the past few days, more than 10 villages in Yangqiu County had been infected, but not a single person had died. This was even more impossible. Without a doubt, the source of this plague was that divine doctor. He had spread this plague and treated the people along the way. His goal was to absorb merit and willpower from the people to aid his cultivation. Li Mu could not help but sigh. There was always someone better than him, and there was always a demon better than a demon. Using this method of cultivation, not only did he not need to kill people, but he could also gain a good reputation. It was much better than those heretical cultivation methods that only knew how to kill people and extract their souls. Unfortunately, this method was also unorthodox. Constable Zhao said, "It looks like we still have to catch that divine doctor if we want to completely quell this plague." Li Mu originally wanted to remind them that the other party was a fourth realm demon, but after thinking about it carefully, he realized that even Constable Zhao could not tell. If he spoke, not to mention whether the other two would believe him or not, it would be difficult for him to explain himself. He thought about it and could only say, "This person can spread the plague without anyone noticing. His cultivation must be quite high. It's best to be careful." Constable Zhao smiled and said, "Don't worry. If the three of us work together, we can even fight against divine powers. That person can't be a creation realm cultivator, right?" Since Constable Zhao said so, Li Mu had nothing to worry about. 15 minutes later, Constables Zhao, Qian, and Sun, Li Mu, Lin Yu, and another old official who had condensed 3 souls left the inn and went out of the city. Yang County, Su Village. "Thank you for saving our lives, Divine Doctor." "Take care, Divine Doctor." The plague in Su Village had just been quelled. The villagers knelt on the ground and watched a middle-aged man in gray leave. The middle-aged man carried a medicine box and left Su Village. He walked into a forest and his body swayed. He held onto a tree to prevent himself from falling. After meditating for a while, his complexion improved a little. After searching the forest for a while, he finally found a few stalks of medicinal herbs. He walked to the herbs and rolled up his sleeves. There were dozens of neat scratches on his wrist. Some of them had already scabbed over, while others were new. He did not care about the scars and used his fingernail to make a new wound on his wrist. Blood dripped from the wound onto the herbs and was quickly absorbed by them. He uprooted the herbs, brushed away the soil, and put them in the medicine box. Then he walked out of the forest and along the official road, came to another village. There was also a plague outbreak in this village and more than 20 people had fallen ill. Someone stood at the entrance of the village and looked around. When he saw the middle-aged man, he was pleasantly surprised. "It's the Divine Doctor. The Divine Doctor is here. We are saved." The middle-aged man walked into the village and took out a few herbs from his medicine box. He wrote down a prescription and handed it to the village chief. He said, "Follow this prescription and add these herbs. Boil it into a pot. Drink it and you will be cured." "Thank you, Divine Doctor. I will ask someone to get the herbs." The middle-aged man stayed in the village for half a day until the villagers drank the medicine and recovered. Then he left the village amidst the villagers' gratitude. The villagers gathered at the entrance of the village and knelt on the ground as they watched him leave. No one noticed that hundreds of rats had crawled out from every corner of the village and left. In a valley far away from the village, the rats gathered again and surrounded the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man took a deep breath. Wisps of black gas escaped from the rats and were sucked into his body. He waved at the rats and said, "Disperse." The rats squeaked for a while and circled around him a few times before leaving the valley. The middle-aged man felt that his body was full of psychokinesis. His eyes were filled with hope as he muttered, "It should be enough." At this moment, a white light suddenly appeared on his face. His face instantly became alert as he looked at the back of the valley. A few figures walked out from the back of the valley. Constable Zhao held a bronze mirror in his hand. The mirror shone on the middle-aged man and a monster with a rat's head appeared. Constable Zhao looked at the middle-aged man and said, "So it's a rat demon. You spread the plague and pretended to be a divine doctor to fool the people and absorb their psychokinesis. You really know how to play." Chapter 157. The rats retreated from the village and followed the middle-aged man here. Li Mu and the others, who were hiding in the dark, saw everything clearly. At this point, the truth had been revealed. The plague in Yang County was deliberately spread by this rat demon. He spread the plague and pretended to be a divine doctor. He directed and acted out a good show to deceive the people and absorb their telekinesis for cultivation. The middle-aged man looked at the people who suddenly appeared and his expression changed. He looked at Constable Zhao and tried to explain, "I did these things, but I did not harm a single life. But your actions have disturbed the peace of Yang County," Constable Zhao said. Using this method to steal the people's telekinesis is not allowed by the imperial court. Come with us to the county yamen. The middle-aged man said, "I will go to the yamen and turn myself in, but not now." As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly fled in a certain direction. However, he only ran a few steps before another figure walked out from behind a tree in front of him. He changed directions, but he was still blocked by someone. The three constables, Zhao, Qian, and Sun, surrounded the rat demon in the valley. Li Mu, Lin Yu, and another old official blocked the last exit of the valley, completely sealing off his escape route. The middle-aged man also knew that he could not easily escape today, so he rushed in the direction of Constable Qian. Constable Zhao and Constable Sun hurriedly chased after him. The three of them joined forces and fought the rat demon. Under normal circumstances, 3 assembled spirit cultivators would not be a match for a fourth realm demon in a head-on battle. However, the 3 constables of the county yamen were not ordinary assembled spirit cultivators. They were different from Wu Bo, who was in the assembled spirit realm, who was cultivated by a sect. They had experienced hundreds of battles and were extremely experienced in battle. With the advantage of their Dharma treasures, they were able to fight the demon to a standstill. Li Mu secretly performed the Do incantation. In his eyes, the movements of Zhao, Qian, and Sun suddenly slowed down. Moreover, he instantly saw through several flaws in their movements. While he was amazed at the magic of this formula, he also saw some other things. The rat demon's aura seemed to be a little weak, and he did not have the heart to fight. He only defended and did not attack, constantly looking for a way out. If it wasn't for this reason, Constable Zhao and the other 2 might not have been able to fight him to a draw. The bronze mirror in Constable Zhao's hand was a powerful Dharma treasure. Every time the light reflected by the bronze mirror shone on the rat demon, its body would pause for a moment. At that moment, Constable Qian and Constable Sun would take advantage of the situation and attack. The magical treasures in their hands were all thick and solid iron chains. The chains in their hands seemed to have a life of their own. They were very flexible and could be used to attack or defend. Taking advantage of the moment when the rat demon was shown by the bronze mirror and his body froze, 2 chains were thrown out and bound his body. The 3 bailiffs each grabbed the 3 ends of the 2 iron chains. Constable Zhao shouted, "Come and help." Lin Yu's speed was very fast. He picked up the last end of the iron chain and the 4 of them stood in 4 different directions, firmly restricting the middle-aged man's movements. The middle-aged man let out a roar. Li Mu saw a round object in his mouth emitting a strong light. Then, his body suddenly expanded, and many gray hairs grew on his body. He used his thick arms to hold the iron chain. With a sudden tug, Constable Qian and Constable Sun were sent flying. He exerted more force, and the iron chains in Constable Zhao and Lin Yu's hands flew out. In the end, the strength of a human could not compare to that of a demon. The middle-aged man broke free of the iron chains and madly ran out of the valley. His speed was several times faster than before. The direction he was rushing in was the direction of Li Mu and the old official. A ray of sword light shot out from Li Mu's hand, blocking the middle-aged man for a moment. This moment was enough for the 3 constables to catch up and hold the middle-aged man back again. The middle-aged man let out an angry roar to the sky. "I didn't kill anyone. Why do you have to force me?" Constable Zhao said, "We're just following the law. You violated the laws of the Great Zhou. We can't let you go just like that." "Then I'll offend you." The middle-aged man hissed, and his body changed again. The hair on his body grew again, and his human head turned into a rat's head. His hands turned into sharp claws, glowing with a faint cold light. Although demons advocated transforming into human form, they could only unleash their full strength in their true form. In the blink of an eye, the middle-aged man turned into a giant rat. In the next moment, his figure disappeared before everyone's eyes. Constable Qian's body trembled, and a few bloody wounds appeared on his chest. Fresh blood seeped out of the wounds and soon turned black. "Be careful, there's poison." He only had time to warn before he fell to the ground, unconscious. Constable Zhao was shocked. "Oh no, even the primordial spirit can't resist this poison." Just as he finished speaking, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He lowered his head and looked at the black blood flowing out of his chest. In the last second before his consciousness faded, he saw a black shadow pouncing toward Constable Sunday. Constable's son sensed extreme danger and instinctively wanted to dodge, but he could not outrun the black shadow. He avoided his chest, but blood burst out of his arm. His primordial spirit had only left his body halfway before it was sucked back in. He fell to the ground and no longer made a sound. After two strange sounds, Lin Yu and the old official also fell to the ground. The black shadow pounced toward Li Mu. Li Mu stood still and did not move. Clang. Bai in his hand suddenly flew out of its scabbard, and a shadow condensed in the air. Madame Chu swung her sword, and flames burst out from the sword. The black shadow was forced back and finally revealed itself. Sensing Madame Chu's aura, a hint of shock appeared in the giant rat's mung-bean eyes. Madame Chu looked at the rat demon in front of her and asked, "Young master, how should we deal with this demon?" At first, she called Li Mu master, but later on, Li Mu felt that it was too embarrassing to call him that, so he asked her to change the way she addressed him. The rat demon's aura was weak and not at its peak. After fighting with the three constables for so long, it was no longer a match for Madame Chu. He glanced at the rat demon and said, "Just capture him alive. Don't kill him." Madame Chu held Bai tightly and went forward. Li Mu stood at the side and watched the demon and ghost fight. A ghost cultivator at the peak of the soul realm with dermic powers encountered a demon of the same level that had lost more than half of its strength. There was almost no suspense in controlling the situation. In the blink of an eye, the rat demon was about to be defeated. At this moment, Li Mu suddenly sensed something. He turned his head and looked into the distance. Behind him, two wisps of strong beastly aura were rapidly approaching him without concealing their presence. These two demonic auras were not inferior to the rat demon. Clearly, they were also two fourth-realm demonic cultivators. Li Mu's expression finally changed. Madame Chu had just advanced to the soul realm. Dealing with a rat demon was already her limit. She would definitely not be a match for two fourth-realm demons. Madame Chu clearly sensed the two demonic auras as well. She stopped fighting the rat demon and immediately retreated to Li Mu's side. The enemy was outnumbered. Li Mu's best course of action was to retreat. However, Constable Zhao and the others were still lying on the ground. He could not abandon them and escape alone. Li Mu said in a low voice, "Come to the sword and lend me your dermic powers." To Li Mu, Madame Chu was a high-powered power bank that could make up for the lack of his dermic powers at any time. When he sensed the abundant dermic powers in his body, the two demonic auras were already approaching. At this moment, Li Mu realized that the two demonic auras seemed familiar. It was not until two burly men descended from the sky and landed beside the rat demon that Li Mu's face revealed a look of shock. He said, "Why are you guys here?" The green bull demon and the tiger demon clearly did not expect to meet Li Mu here. Bai Tingxin looked at Lu Hanyan and asked, "Is she the one you like?" Lu Hanyan looked at Bai Tingxin and asked, "Who is this?" Li Mu said, "Ignore her. Let's go." Bai Tingxin rolled her eyes and suddenly hugged Li Mu's arm. She twisted her body and said, "That night in bed, you said you liked me the most. Now that you have a new lover, you don't want to talk to me anymore." Li Mu pulled his arm out of her chest and held Lu Hanyan's hand. Under Bai Tingxin's gloating eyes, they walked out calmly. He and Lu Hanyan had been together for so long and had experienced so many misunderstandings. How could there be no trust between the two of them? Lu Hanyan walked out of the yamen hand in hand with him. Then she looked at Li Mu and asked, "How did you offend her?" Li Mu said, "A snake demon. She suffered a little in my hands. Since then we have been enemies." Lu Hanyan said in surprise, "Why is a snake demon in the county yamen?" Li Mu said, "It's a long story. I'll tell you when we go back." When they talked about Bai Tingxin, they had to talk about Bai Yinxin. When they talked about the process of Li Mu and Bai Yinxin getting to know each other, they had to talk about Suhi. It was not until after dinner that Li Mu told Lu Hanyan everything clearly. After listening to him, Lu Hanyan's attention was no longer on Bai Tingxin. She asked Li Mu, "You have another snake demon friend and a female ghost friend?" Li Mu immediately explained, "Don't misunderstand anything. Heaven and earth can testify to my feelings for you. I'm just friends with them. If I lie to you, I'll be struck by lightning." Rumble. As soon as his voice fell, a muffled sound suddenly came from above Li Mu's head. He was startled. When he looked up, he found that the originally clear sky was suddenly covered with dark clouds in a short time. Lightning flashed in the dark clouds, and then there was a series of roars. Li Mu looked at Lu Hanyan. His throat moved and he said, "Believe me, I don't have that ability. I didn't say that I don't believe you." Lu Hanyan held his hand and suddenly felt a chill on her face. When she looked up, she said in surprise, "It's snowing." Li Mu looked up at the sky and saw snowflakes falling from the sky. Although the winter in Beijing was cold, it rarely snowed in the past. This year's snow came exceptionally early. Furthermore, it was strange. There were no signs at all. After only a quarter of an hour, the dark clouds in the sky inexplicably dispersed. The snowflakes that fell to the ground also melted without a trace. If it were not for the wet marks on the ground, no one would know that it had just snowed. Wanwan and Xiaobai had already run out excitedly and were ready to make a snowman. But the snow suddenly stopped, and they walked back to their rooms in disappointment. Early the next morning, Li Mu went to the yamen and found the atmosphere in the duty room very solemn. Chapter 165. The feminine man sneered and said, "How dare a fifth realm brat call himself a king?" No matter what the reason was, she killed an official of the imperial court and massacred the county office. She has violated the imperial court's bottom line and dignity. We must destroy her soul. County Minister Chen waved his sleeves and left. The two parted on bad terms. Constable Zhao walked forward and asked, "Sir, what should we do now?" County Minister Chen said, "Organize the complaints of the people in Yang County and send them to the county office. Send people to suppress the evil spirits in Yang County and be careful of Chu Jiang of Gojosian's subordinates." County Minister Shen walked forward and said, "Although she died unjustly, she did violate the imperial court's bottom line. If we can't bring her to justice, it will be North County's fault. It will be hard to explain to the imperial court. I'm worried about Chu Jiang of Gojosian." County Premier Chen's expression was solemn as he said, King Chu Jiang definitely has some sort of objective for coming to the northern county. The longer he stays here, the greater his plans will be. Presently, he already has 16 soul realm ghosts under him. If he subdues even this fierce spirit, then his forces will definitely increase greatly. We have to be careful of him. County Minister Shen nodded and asked, I heard that they asked for help from the ancestral court of Fu Lu School. Did they reply? They were rejected. County Premier Chen snorted coldly and said, a fifth realm ferocious spirit can only be subdued by the peak masters. The Talisman sect heard that this woman died because she was wronged. Before she died, she resonated with heaven and earth and turned into a ferocious spirit. She refused to help and they could not even enter the mountain gate. In the past few days, Li Mu's task in Yang County was to organize the files. He heard about the evil spirit every day. County Minister Chen had been chasing her but couldn't catch up. The Imperial Court also sent an Imperial envoy to supervise North County's government and get rid of this evil spirit that violated the Imperial Court's bottom line. They also offered a large reward to attract cultivators from North County. A large portion of the cultivators sympathized with the evil spirit's encounter and were unwilling to help. However, the generous reward had indeed attracted a large number of people. However, they had joined hands to encircle and annihilate that fierce spirit many times, but they had not succeeded once. All the cultivators who surrounded the evil spirit were sucked dry of their magic power. Although their lives were preserved, their cultivation foundation was destroyed, and they could only become mortals in the future. It was said that the Imperial Court had once sent people to Mount Baiyun for help, but they were rejected by the ancestral court of Fu Lu School. The culprit should be someone else. The feminine man frowned and said, Why should I believe your one-sided story? Xuandu said, I can swear in the name of Buddha. Don't give me that. I don't believe in Buddha. It's useless for you to swear in the name of Buddha. The feminine man looked at County Governor Chen and said, I'll only give you 3 days. After 3 days, if the evil spirit is not captured, you have to think about how to explain it to the Imperial Court. Xuandu chanted the Buddhist chant again and said, If revenge breeds revenge, will there ever be an end to it? That evil spirit is very powerful. If we can guide it, the feminine man waved his hand and said, This is the Imperial Court's business. It's not up to a monk like you to interrupt. Xuandu looked at him and said, Please don't interrupt me. The feminine man said coldly, So what if I interrupt you? Xuandu said, I'm trying to reason with you. The feminine man said, There's no reason for me to reason with you. What this penniless monk hates the most are unreasonable people. Xuandu shook his head and didn't look at the feminine man again. He walked to Li Mu and said, Benefactor Li, please help me with the monk's staff. Then he looked at Bai Yinxin beside Li Mu and said, Snake Demon Girl, please help me with the alms bowl. Thank you. She did not know when County Governor Chen had entered the room. County Governor Chen looked up at the sky and seemed to be thinking about something. When Li Mu looked up, Xuandu had already disappeared in front of him. Then he heard the sound of fists hitting flesh and Xuandu's familiar scolding. Damn it, I gave you face, but you don't want it. I'm telling you, I've been tolerating you for a long time. What's wrong with the Imperial Court? So what if the Imperial Court doesn't care about the lives of the people and can't distinguish between right and wrong? Li Mu had already known Xuandu's character. When he was still willing to reason with him, it was better to reason with him. When he was no longer willing to reason with him, it would be useless no matter how much he begged him. He would choose to use his fists to tell him what the real reason was. At this time, County Governor Chen was nowhere to be seen and County Governor Chen was absent-minded. The constables who were standing in the yard also chose to leave. Bai Yinxin held the alms bowl and stared blankly at the scene in front of her with her eyes wide open. The alms bowl fell from her hand and hit her feet, but she didn't notice it at all. You're tuning in to the Wandering Hero YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.